What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Tuesday night, we're back again. Want to thank everybody for last week's episode. Truly insane. Our most successful episode. You're going to go and check that one out. That is our first look at the 2025 rookie class. It was a lot of fun to get Brett Whitefield in here and talk us through a lot of this. We got a lot of questions about some players that were left off the list, some apparently more controversial than others. A lot of fun in the comments section, a lot of strong opinions. Can't wait to get back into that. If you haven't listened or watched that episode, I encourage you to go and do so. It is on the page and in the podcast channel. Again, as always, if you're listening to this on the Fantasy Points Now feed, head over to the Dynasty Points feed, as the Fantasy Points Now feed is going to be changing towards the end. And if you don't want to miss any Dynasty Points content, that's going to be where to go. That being said, today's episode is going to be a little different. It's a little bit of a different look. Every year, free agents sign, and there is a lot of, crashing out, if you would. There's a lot of overreactions to who's going where. There's a lot of this player is dead now. What's going to happen? What we are going to do is we are going to list the free agents in order of players we think are going to be able to be difference makers, who could actually cause problems for veteran players, late round type players, and really get into kind of a very top-heavy free agent class as of now. Keep in mind, there are always people that get cut late. There are always surprise additions to this list. This doesn't include potentially traded or the Kirk Cousins of the world who's just recently been replaced. So there's going to be a lot of trash cans on this list, but there's also some very interesting type players that we could make cases for or not make cases for. We're going to talk through those. We are going to touch on the Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Lad McConkey stuff because the chat has already asked about it and Twitter was alive and well. We have a question that we didn't answer last week that we're going to start with. That's the outline. That's today. Joining me on this quest, as always, is Jacob Sanderson, Lucas Gilbert, and Ryan Heath is back after missing last week to do much studying and much writing, if you would, thanks to the full slate of games. Welcome back, Ryan. We had people asking about you last week.
No, you guys put on a great show without me. I very much enjoyed that listen. So good. Well done to all of you.
Not without you, more like for you, like in your honor, I would say. Never without, just always in our hearts.
And today we'll try to do a great show in spite of you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah. As long as I can, if I can just keep myself from dragging you guys down, like to a noticeable degree, that'll be a win for me tonight.
We have comments like, I hope it's 2 hours. Anti says, I hope it's 3. Keith says he hopes it's 4. Jacob has a hard out at an hour and a half. We might go a little bit longer. The rest of us,
as long as you want.
We'll see what happens. When will the week 16's projections be up? Tuesday nights. They go up Tuesday nights as they always do. As for the exact time, don't know.
I'm leaving because I'm going to see Wicked tonight for the second time with work.
Oh yeah.
Which is a totally reasonable excuse to leave after 90 minutes of a podcast. So I'll once again be defying gravity.
So yes, so working in Wicked references for this show. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love feeling lost on references on my own podcast.
I'm gonna get 0 of them probably. So yeah.
All right, Lucas, me and you, we're just gonna slip it back and forth. We're gonna play a little game to see who can make more Wicked references without the other ones noticing. You can't react.
Yeah, I'm not. I can just say
no reaction.
You're both gonna bat 1,000 because I don't know any of them.
It's just a game for me, you, and the audience.
Tyler says with his usual $5 and a very nice 69 cents. Big question now is, where does the eventual fat dumpy on the trade market rank? Kirk Cousins, for those aware of the dumpy lore. I don't know. He looks washed. Can they trade him to the XFL?
I already know where he's gonna be. He's gonna be a fucking Colt.
That would track with their history. That being said, Ryan, last week it was brought to my attention that we missed a question, and I hate doing that. It's not like us, but the show went long, to say the least. So we promised we would open this up. This person comes from the Pure Potential YouTube channel, found us, and now I feel like a dirtbag for missing this question after he came all the way. It says, "Hey, Fantasy Points, Simon Joseph here. Sent a small super chat in the video. It did get missed. Yes, it did. He said, I've got 6 101s, 5 are my pick, and I was wondering how much league specific should determine whether I'm drafting Jeanty or moving the pick. He said he's got contenders that are start 9, no brainer spot. Leagues that are mostly start 10, 12 teams that are in between, etc. He says, put more concisely, my question is about the difference in my selling the price of the 101 between a shallow contending league and a deeper league where I might still be on my way up. Basically, I read this as, when is it smart to take Jeanty at 101 when you have 101, and when is it not, is kind of how I read this question off. Jacob, you and I have done a very long video on this in the Bijan year. I think it's a good time to bring this back, because I don't believe that a true legitimate 101 should necessarily be taking Jeanty if you can avoid it. You obviously want to trade it for whatever haul you can, but it's not like Jeanty's just not going to be valuable the second you click the button.
Yeah, I mean, I can't answer this with any specificity because I have no idea, like, really what his market value is going to be in terms of how much to trade him for. And I don't even know exactly how much I'm going to value him in a vacuum yet because it's December. But from the zoomed out perspective, I mostly agree with Tom. The less valuable your team is, I think the more open-minded you should be to multiplying the value of that pick and spreading it across a lot of other assets, because it just gives you more chances to gain value versus consolidating it all in one piece. With a really, really good team, I think that in general, what's more important on your best teams than value is the opportunities for scarcity. So you want to get access to the types of players who just aren't in the trade market. Not as in they're too expensive, but as in managers are just telling you, fuck off, not interested, not available, not liquid. And, it's very easy to see how Jeanty becomes one of those players. So, yeah, more valuable team. I'm prioritizing the scarcity. I'm making the pick. Less valuable, I think, spread it out.
I think that's the right way to look at it. Knowing your league is also important. Do you have guys in your league that, trade for running backs, that make the big swing for a running back? Do you have guys that are paying 2 first plus for Gibbs? Have you seen that? Are those guys in there? If you're in a league where they're like, I'm just never paying anything for a running back, regardless if it's the difference of me playing a fullback and missing a bye week, then you're probably better off moving the pick when it's still a pick. That makes sense. Yeah. I think that's, anyone else, anything to add? I think that's pretty.
I think the only thing I think I wanted to add was, now is probably like too early to be thinking about it. I would not be maybe you have the 101 at this point. I wouldn't be moving it until at least March, probably until after the draft. Just from my experience, you're always going to get the best return literally when it's on the clock, or when it's effectively on the clock, once we know the landing spot and all of that. That's just when people are gonna pay up more. So yeah, I would be sitting on it. I would not be, from like a strategy perspective, I would not be telling people you're shopping the pick like far ahead of time. I think you don't want people to like smell blood in the water there that you don't want to make the pick. So yeah, those are just the things I would add. But yeah, overall, mostly agree. If it's a low value team,
there's a lot to like there.
If you can avoid it, you want a longer, or to more spread out asset, a longer time horizon asset than a running back.
I also think that you want to think, this depends on who you are, how many dynasty leagues you're in. But if you're a portfolio player, if you're in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 leagues, like most of the time, the way I start to think about it as I get around rookie draft time is I try to have ideal exposures to each player that I want to try and hit. And, it's going to be easier for you, I suspect, to trade away 101s than it is to trade for 101s. So, if you have a certain exposure that you have in your mind of what you think you will end up wanting to Jeanty, or you don't know yet, but you're going to eventually set that, I think, it may be counterproductive to trade away a couple now, get to April, realize like, oh, I'm only going to have 2 Jeantys in like 34 leagues, but I actually would like to have 6. And then it's like, are you going to have to then go trade for 4 more? Or are you going to have to spend more than you just got in the return on the other ones? So not saying you have to be over market on Jeanty, but if that ends up being your plan, make sure that you actually have enough 101s left over, because I think it's going to be generally easier to sell off the ones you have than to add more.
It's also important to note, right? Like in a class that's this murky, right? 103 is like, I have no idea. I'm sorry, but I got no idea. Maybe the 104, like maybe if it's Jeanty, Tet, Shadur in whatever order, sure. If you're not sold on the quarterback too, then it becomes like this class is entirely up in the air. So if you're moving 101 to trade back for 104 and 107, you're just taking unnecessary risk in December. You don't have to do that right now.
See, I push back on that a little bit right now. Honestly, like if you are a savvy drafter and you feel fairly good about a couple of these prospects, whenever there's so much unknown with the class and a very clear player that we've been saying so since spring camps were starting last year, like I feel like this is the time to take advantage of that, because I feel like there are going to be some desperate managers out there who say there's a very clear 101 player in this class. And yes, I think that Ashton Jeanty is head and shoulders above any other player. He's not a Bijan Robinson like level of certainty or level of talent coming into the draft. I think there's just a little bit more uncertainty. Even though I love his profile, I love him as a player, I think that you can really take advantage of some managers getting scared off by what this class is kind of offering and really maximize some of that talent, especially like as we start to sell this more. I feel like, certain picks, like let's say the 107, since Tom, you brought that up, but picks a little bit later on are going to start to go up in value, and you're eventually going to start getting less in terms of what you're going to be offered for Jeanty, because a manager is going to start to be able to talk himself into some of the players that he can see, falling down the board a little bit. So at least like right now, I'm going to have a few 101s, and I'm going to be looking to move them as soon as I can, because I do feel like there's going to be a manager out there who desperately wants Jeanty and is willing to pay up.
Yeah, the problem is you're doing it in December, right? So if you can move Jeanty for 104 and 107, like 101 for 104 and 107 today, you can projectably move 101 for 104 and 107 in March. And then you get even more information. You actually know everyone who's declared. You actually start getting like data and a little more info.
I'm with Lucas on this. I think I want to get it while people are fearful of the 104 and the 107. Once people like 104 and 107, it'll be more costly. There's going to be guys, people are going to like them. It's going to be fine.
I think there's going to be easily 3 firsts right now. I think you could get 104, 107, and a 2026 first for Ashton Jeanty and the 101 right now. Like, no problem.
Yeah, again, I like Jacob said, it's going to cost you a lot more if you go and make the big oops. And if this class stays with a terrible perception on it, now I just don't think you have to do it in December. Right? I really don't think you have to make that move today. I think you can make that move when we had the player you really were hoping to get at 104 goes back to school. That there's too much.
There's no players like that in this class.
But there's too much in December that we don't know in a class that there's so much speculation.
I think I would just say, if you want to make that bet that our estimation of this draft class is going to increase, which, you know what, decent bet. That happens, I would say, more years than not. We feel better about a draft class in late April than we do in December or in January. If you want to make that bet right now, you don't have to make it with the 101, right?
No,
because if you're trading the 101, you're setting up like a parlay for yourself where it's okay. There's going to be deeper talent that rises up in this draft class, but also we aren't going to see the top end get even better in people's estimation, right? Like that's just very difficult for me. If you want to make that bet with players or with 2026 capital or with whatever else you have to make that bet with, I think that's fine. But yeah, I wouldn't be flipping the 101 for that, because that does just feel like you're gambling essentially. Like that you're just kind of guessing where the peaks and valleys in the value in the first round is going to be, when we don't really have that much to go off for where that might end up.
Yeah, it feels like 3 firsts for 1 pick is hard to turn down, period. Like, Jacob, I remember there's a period of time we said, like, anyone offering you 4 firsts for any player, like, it's hard to turn that player down, that deal down, no matter what. Even 3 is hard to just not send that out. But it really feels like if you're doing that now, it is like, I know drafting more than anyone else. And then you get stuck with, like, Quentin Johnston because you really think he's a great prospect. It just, I feel like it's ego challenging more than you have to walk the tightrope in December. I just feel like you can wait a month or 2 and the values really won't shift that much in my experience, especially for someone who may not even be a savvy trader, who may not be someone that can get out of a situation that they've kind of walked themselves into by doing that. I think you have to be a pretty good and consistent manager, and there's just some people that don't want to do that when they end up making the big boo-boo, the big mistake. So lots of different ways you can look at it. Hopefully we hit that question and then some after missing it last week. We apologize for that.
We should question 1 for 13 minutes. Right on track for an abbreviated show.
That's right on track for an abbreviated show. But we like to take care of our super chatted listeners, especially when they're coming all the way from another YouTube channel and hitting that subscribe button. Obviously, we don't do a lot of super chat stuff here on this show. It's kind of more of an open debate topic type bit. But if you got a burning question, you let us know. We'll definitely take care of it one way or the other. That being said, break 1 we're going to hit right now. And we come back, we're going to talk Lad versus Marvin Harrison Jr. because this was a hot button topic today. And Jacob, the people want to hear your take on this. It was in the comments already before we went live. They're waiting. I'll set that up on the other side of this break. Yes, Theo the Greek says, like and subscribe. The holidays are coming, and my family needs even more Timbits than we have stored already. I have freezers and freezers full, but it gets cold here in the tundra. We need to be prepared for winter, and I need the supply of Timbits, and we can only do that if you guys hit like and subscribe. Help me not get fired. Let's look at a question from fellow Winnipegger Dustin Ross in the chat today. He says, I need to hear all sides on the RTDB v. the people. He almost got it right. The bit is the people versus RTDB. Pretty close, Dustin. Shout out to you. He says, of the day, which was Marvin Harrison Jr. or Lad. I want to set this up by saying that it's very dramatic, very player takey, very shock value, and I don't think it has to be. Jacob, let's break it down.
I didn't intend that to be my day. First of all, I put out a tweet about why I have temporarily, at least, put Brian Thomas slightly ahead of Neighbors, and then in a follow-up tweet, I said, well, Lad probably deserves to be part, because I put on all these stats of Thomas versus Neighbors, which they were pretty similar. And then in the follow-up tweet, I was like, I probably should have put Lad on this as well because he's been so good. But yes, he's clearly the wide receiver 3 for me, and Harrison's 4. It's kind of a throwaway tweet. And then 30 seconds later, I get subtweeted by, or it's a very big coincidence. I don't know which, but I have a suspicion. By my good friend of the program, David Gauthier. It'd be absurd to put Lad McConkey out of Marvin Harrison. So obviously I had to get in the replies. And then that started. So, I mean, to me, it's just a matter of, I don't know. We do this, it feels like every year. If there's like one bet that has been extremely profitable in Dynasty consistently the last several years, it is just whatever prospect was not thought of quite as highly as the tier 1 prospects, who goes out and has a demonstrably elite rookie season in a full-time role. Now, elite rookie season. I'm not talking about like, the guys that pop or whatever, but the true established guys who run every route, or at least start to halfway through the year or something. And then they go out and put up awesome seasons, 25% plus targets per route run, 2+ yards per route run, 80+ PFF grade. And then people always feel like the other shoe is going to drop because people have made up their mind with this tautological way of thinking where it's like, oh, he's not a wide receiver 1 because he's not a wide receiver 1. And we saw this happen, I think, most prominently with Amon-Ra St. Brown years ago, with Rashee Rice last year. And this bet, I mean, it's not going to hit every single time, but it seems to hit most of the dang time. And this year, I think we get set up with Ladd McConkey, who is in an incredible situation. He's going to be tied to Herbert for forever. And yes, I think that they're probably going to add a wide receiver that's not Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston, but lots of targets for him to go around. I mean, it's not like it's just some analytics darling either. I mean, Matt Harmon is on record saying he has by far the best film of any rookie in the class, even ahead of Neighbors and Thomas. His reception perception marks across the board are the best in the class from a data perspective. Lines up primarily in the slot, but he runs every route. He stays on the field outside of 12 personnel and wins in the intermediate area of the field. His ADOT is 10.3, which is totally normal. It's not like it's the rookie season JSN, Rashee Rice, gimmick ADOT. He just seems like an awesome wide receiver who, for particular reasons, people have decided has a cap ceiling on him. So yeah, to me, where we talk about the Harrison, and I put in a fall between, I don't think Harrison sucks or is some bust. I think I still have him in my top 12 or at least top 15 receivers in my dynasty rankings. It's just where I would want to value Harrison is right below the guys who, to me, have proven doubtlessly that they are elite assets in their rookie seasons, which to me, there are 3 of those guys. And then Harrison, if I want to bet on continued growth, which I think is very likely, that's where I want to make that bet. So I preferred Ladd, and this caused a stir. And then Tom and I were talking about it, and then it caused kind of a stir about playing the market and how that factors in. So I'm happy to get into that too. But that was the take today from Twitter.
Yeah, I don't think it's not shocking to me. Like maybe it's just me. I haven't been like a buy. I'm never drafting him at 201. We're drafting him for a ceiling that he could not hit. And that looked like it was the case. And I wasn't, tearing down from the elites to get him. And then I was happy taking other wide receivers in rookie drafts and passing. Like I was take a quarterback at 101 for most of my draft. It just doesn't surprise me. Like we all see what we see with Marvin Harrison. And yes, you can say it's Pet Zig. You can say it's Kyle. There's a lot of different things. But what we can very clearly see is like a good player for these other wide receivers. Like none of this is shocking to me. I don't think any of this is like controversial at all. Like none of it blows me away.
Yeah, I think before the show I was saying that this debate's kind of boring to me. And the reason it's boring is because whether you prefer Ladd or Harrison is kind of just down to what you most use to make your decisions on players, which is boring to me to argue over. Anything that has to do with his production on the field in the NFL is obviously going to be, I prefer Ladd, right? And that is what I most lean into in my personal process. So yeah, I prefer Ladd to Harrison. You can make like pro Harrison arguments in terms of, yeah, as Thomas was saying, just the system in Arizona is all-time bad. A lot of smart film people have told me basically that seems fair enough as a consideration. Harrison, I guess in this theoretical sense, has like a higher ceiling because he's bigger and he plays outside. That's kind of a perception that I would always rather bet against, though. Not just is it technically true that Ladd McConkey can never be like Jamar Chase or whatever? Yes. But do I want to make my decision between a player based on them hitting like the 99th percentile versus like the 95th percentile of a fantasy asset? Probably not. Like I've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown go put up top 5 numbers. We've seen Rashee Rice do it. I am totally fine drafting these slot guys that people's brains just kind of break over. Slot production is awesome for fantasy guys. Like we all get really excited when the big guy goes in the slot. I was writing the Everything Report with Scott Barrett this week. He was absolutely losing his mind for like 2 paragraphs about how happy he was that Malik Neighbors finally got to run some routes out of the slot this week. Yeah. But when Ladd McConkey does it, or when a guy that's under 6 foot does it, we're like, oh my God, like his ceiling is capped. Like we got to sell him. I just have never been kind of that mindset. If you are, I get it. Like, I understand why you would then
The only
prefer
reason we
Harrison,
care about
but
the slot
it's just
is
a
if they
boring
don't
thing
play
to
in
argue
12
about.
personnel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like,
if they're on the
a
field,
legitimate,
who
it's a
cares?
legitimate troubling issue for like a Jaden Reed or a Josh Downs, and maybe that changes at some point in their career. But like right now, they don't play in 12, and that sucks. But
Yeah.
Ladd does play in 12. He plays slot in 11, and then he plays outside in 12, just like Amon-Ra did or any of these other guys.
Yeah. And I guess my last point was, I think the only okay, like, anti-Ladd argument is I think he's injury prone, which I very rarely am putting injury prone labels onto players or making decisions based off that or caring about it. Another thing that generally you're going to do well fading in, like, against the market if someone gets labeled as injury prone. But that, I mean, Ladd has been banged up throughout his college career. He's been banged up some throughout this year. Fair enough. If that's your anti-Ladd argument, then I it's not like something I can just dismiss out of hand. But yeah, I feel like that's just every angle of it. It's just very, it's boring to me. Like I said, even though I just talked about it for 3 minutes uninterrupted. But
yeah, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, coming out of college, the biggest thing with Ladd McConkey is that, he would get beat up by, press coverage. I haven't seen any advanced stats on it this year to see how he's been doing against press coverage. Obviously, what he's put in terms of production far surpasses Marvin Harrison Jr., but Harrison Jr. was a generational draft prospect whenever he came out. That's what made him such a popular 101 pick coming out. That's why he was at the 201. I can understand people still hanging on to that sort of draft profile.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that it's a little tough for you to make the argument that at cost you prefer Marvin Harrison Jr. right now over Ladd McConkey. Just
hell yeah.
It's going to be tough for a while, and I don't think like Jacob even said too, nobody's saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a bad player. Nobody's saying that Ladd McConkey is a bad player here. And you don't have to take that stance whenever you're arguing players, which we just see so many times whenever, we're just scrolling through Twitter. Like, that inevitably happens. They've both had up and downs as rookie seasons. They were both good draft prospects. Obviously, Marvin Harrison better, but yeah, I do think, like, as we stand right now, I'm going to be having a lot more Ladd McConkey shares on my teams than I will be Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, that's thank you for saying that, because that's the other element I forgot to mention, which, if you want to value the prospect profile a lot more highly than like the NFL production, of course you would prefer Harrison. But yeah, I guess that's my overarching point, is that it's ultimately just a debate about which things you value the most, which no one is ever changing their minds on. So it feels like we do this exact debate with different players constantly forever.
We had
throughout the year. Yeah.
We had Tier Down Mike, Iowa Mike from South Harmon, on the Dynasty Points Market Report podcast. And we were just discussing how perception of players tends to stick with someone regardless of what we have tangible in the environment that they are in. And it really came down to, if I have to create 2-3 narratives for a player to then he can really, really take off, I'm probably just going to avoid it. And you have to do that with, if Petzig is gone, if Kyler starts targeting him, if they start using him on screens more, if they put him in the slot, now he's the power slot. I can't put that in there. So, and then if you look at the value of these guys, I went and looked for trades for both of them today as Jacob and I were talking about it. And I've noticed that it seems like Marvin seems to get used to move up. I've seen some Marvin Harrison and a 25-1 for Puka and a 25-2 type deals. Same kind of thing. Marvin and a 26-1 for CeeDee Lamb and a 2 type trades getting floated around. I see the same thing with Amon-Ra. Marvin and a 2 for Amon-Ra, which is laughably hilarious to me, that people still don't value Amon-Ra the way they should. It's wild that he's even acquirable. But then when I went and checked out some Ladd McConkey trades, some of it kind of blew me away. We got Nico Collins for Bo Nix and Ladd, Garrett Wilson for Ladd in a third, right? Like Ladd for DJ Moore in a fourth, Ladd for Josh Jacobs. Like these are like completely different value spectrums. If you go and search the Dynasty Daddy or Dynasty Data Lab for trades involving these players, what that says to me is that the plus from trading, because Jacob, your whole thing is I want to trade away Marvin Harrison for Ladd. So I'm going and looking and seeing what other people are trading these guys as, and it tells me that that's a no-brainer. It tells me that the plus that you should get moving down from Marvin to Ladd, that seems to be completely different value gaps to me, is more than worth it in and of itself to capitalize on that right now for what we have as projectable and real production that we can put into our lineups right now. And yeah, I'm all for it. I don't think any of this is shocking.
Two things quick, and then we should get on with the free agent stuff. I'll note on Lucas' question had a question about press, so I wanted to give. Yeah, definitely right. Very small sample of routes he was pressed on in college, but it was poor. Although against man coverage generally, he scored very well. In the NFL, I mean, he almost never gets pressed because he plays predominantly slot flanker, so he doesn't usually the press coverage applies to the X. Harmon had him as only 10 snaps of press coverage in his midseason report. For what it's worth, he had a 90% success rate, which would be like the best in the NFL, but obviously it's 10 snaps, so it's a tiny sample. In terms of man coverage generally, he had the best success rate in the class and had tons of reps on man coverage generally. But his
efficiency on man coverage is like up there with AJ Brown and stuff too. Like
but I mean,
it's actually obscene. Yeah.
If you read any of the Harmon stuff on Ladd's report, I mean, it's basically just like, I don't know, he's the best wide receiver in the history of football. Like all of his reception rates are like are unbelievable. But anyway, so yes, that was the question about press. The other thing is just my thing with like a Marvin Harrison Jr. is, again, like it's not like I'm like writing this guy off in the scrub. So it is very plausible that there comes a time in my life where I am looking to trade for Marvin Harrison Jr. or at least neutral about it. That's the killer. I can't think of many players that I've been against or for their entire career. But in the short to medium term, my perception of Marvin Harrison's market is that like it's hard to get with players like this that have such a strong brand. I just don't think that oftentimes we get the full information when we look at what his trades are, because there's a natural selection bias when we pull in trades involving a player, and that only tells us what the, like, that doesn't necessarily tell us what the universal cost to acquire is or what the cost is in your league. It tells us about one specific instance in which we had a Marvin Harrison Jr. that was an owner that was willing to sell and another one that was willing to buy. My perception is, and I think Tom was talking to me about this before, and I strongly suspect you agree, is that Marvin Harrison Jr. managers are going to be very stubborn in their evaluation of Marvin Harrison because they spent a ton to get him. They picked him, ahead of maybe Caleb in some instances, in almost all instances ahead of Daniels and Neighbors. And so my hunch is that the only times that he gets traded in leagues is like when someone else in the league is willing to buy for like 97 cents on the dollar of his summer price. And you get these two Marvin Harrison Jr. truthers out in the wild. The Ladd managers are a very different sample of people. There's the people that had a lot of conviction on Ladd McConkey, like myself, in the summer. And we're not selling Ladd McConkey right now. But there's lots of people who just kind of took the highest available in ADP, frankly, without probably even giving it that much thought. Oh, I'm up at the 112. Oh, who's Worthy and Thomas are going, okay, I guess I'll take Ladd. And then they're very willing to sell because they don't have that same level of attachment, right? So anyway, I just think that you're getting, the reason I'm saying all that is like, if you want to go out and buy Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that you're going to have to pay like if you averaged out how everyone feels about him, and then you look at that as one cost, which I'll call like his market cost or his consensus cost. And then you look at what it actually takes to buy him off of a real manager who drafted him at the 101. My guess is there's a gap there, and you're going to have to pay a lot more than the consensus for Marvin in a way that you don't for a lot of other players that have less of this mimetic value, like a Lad McConkey. But if you value Harrison less than that consensus value, I don't think that you should hold yourself to the standard of trying to get the value that some extreme Marvin Harrison truther is commanding. I think you should be willing to sell at that consensus value. I don't think you need to sell for what the most Marvin Harrison bullish person in the world thinks. I think you can sell at what the average person thinks. So that's my point on these sort of different valuations of these players, and why I think that sometimes when we look at the fantasy comp stuff on certain players like a Harrison, where there's a very heavy sunk cost, it doesn't always tell the full story.
Yeah, that's why I agree with that completely. That's why I like to go and search as many different trade examples. If I'm having a hard time coming up with the right deal or the right questions to ask, I'd like to go out and see what other people are doing. Because then I get to go, okay, so I wasn't kind of insane for what I was going to offer. This is right kind of in line. And then you get to break it down with what you know about the manager you're dealing with. Because chances are you've tried to do a deal with that person before, and you kind of have a lay of the land. I don't think you should ever be fully basing your trades off of what you are seeing on crowdsourcing websites, but it is a basis to begin. And that to me is how you differentiate, possibly maybe, overpaying when you may not necessarily have to, because in your mind, you're like, there's no way they're going to take less than X and X. And then you end up, nothing scares me more than when I send a trade offer, someone accepts it immediately. Like that's when I know that I fucked up. That's when I know that I should have done a little bit more digging into trades.
It doesn't bother me. I go, great. I got a trade I wanted to have accepted.
Makes me so nervous.
I don't have to send a counter again. Yeah, no.
I go, honestly, thank God. I don't have to talk to this fucking person.
That's my
I don't have to deal with them being like, yeah.
I can't help but be like,
trade offer I send is I hope it's snap accepted.
Yeah, please immediately accept all the trade offers.
I can't help but think like, did I just play myself? It's in the back of my head. I want someone to be like, I want someone to like feel like they need to get a little more out of me. You know what I mean? Maybe that's like a crazy thing that I'm doing to myself mentally, but I hate when if I send a trade to like the Baradox and he doesn't think about it, I immediately think that I just got boned in the unpleasantest of ways. Not great. Not a great feeling for me deep down, but maybe that's just something I have to deal with internally. You know what I mean? I think we've hit enough. I think we're pretty set. We're buying Lad. We're selling Marv. Things can change. I think we could have summed up the whole thing that way, but it was good to dive in. I love Twitter. There's always something going on. I also just love when Ryan's like, "Have you not seen Twitter Day?" I'm like, "No, I've had this podcast for." I thought it was kind of funny.
You pulled, oh no, I'm doing my job on me. Thomas, part of my job is to go on Twitter.
No, that's not what I meant. I just mean that I am not chronically online, Ryan. That's it. Like 9 times out of 10, if somebody asks me, have you seen such and such off Twitter this? The answer is 90% of the time going to be no. Twitter drives me insane. Now, if you want to talk about some YouTube streamer drama, I got you. I am chronically on YouTube. I got you there, but not this other stuff. We'll take a quick break, and then when we come back, we are going to pop in and start discussing some of these free agent tiers, which after looking, it's pretty top heavy. So we'll come back. We'll get that going. Sit tight. Okay, here we go. We have got the tiers here. It's real simple how this works. We obviously have our top tier. To me, these are actual potential impact type players. The second tier here, the A tier, is more for guys that you could play, decent flex spots, people worth paying for, even potentially now. We've got some spot starts. players who are annoying and players that probably won't matter, but they were the top-ish end of the free agent lists that I went and found. So I kind of want to start with the bottom. A lot of people want to start with the top. I kind of want to start with the bottom because it's just going to be quick.
That is so much trouble for us. Like if we start with the bottom, as the
there's
podcast
no
that
way
is very bad at keeping ourselves on schedule. I'll do it. You are the pilot of this ship. I'm just telling you, this is a dangerous fucking idea.
There is no possible way, Jacob, that you could have a 20-minute long aside on the potential of Alexander Madison.
Don't you threaten me with a good time. Alexander Madison. My name is Alexander Madison.
Maybe we do have to start at the top. We'll start at the top because now I'm scared.
Let's start at the bottom with a strict time limit per player.
I've been bullied.
You name the player and you tell us how much time we're
all
allowed.
right. Touchdown / breakout machine. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is a free agent, is having an insane touchdown season with more touchdown grabs than Marvin Harrison Jr., rookie sensation. Possible that somebody buys in on him or he signs right back in with Tennessee. Do we care about a possible Nick Westbrook-Ikhine come startup time next year? Because I get asked, a lot of these are based on questions I get asked about them.
No.
So we're going to go with no. I'm going to put him in. I'm going to go with the C. He's not in the lowest.
How is that a
of the
C?
low.
Possibly below him. Who could possibly be below Nick Westbrook?
We've got, trust me, I've got people that can go below him.
The only thing I want to say
screen.
about NWI is I would love to be his agent right now. That's actually very fun that he's a free agent. I feel like agents get to just like dishonestly cite off whatever stats they can find to get their guy as much money as possible. Like I'm sure you can compare Nick Westbrook-Ikhine to some ridiculous players in terms of touchdowns.
I would love to do like a blind resume comparison of Nick Westbrook-Ikhine compared to like some other wide receiver.
Yeah. This was a test. Okay. And we spent 2 minutes now on NWI. So that lets me know and that lets me gauge how fast we need to move for a lot of these guys. I want to talk Darius Slayton is another veteran wide receiver who's going to hit the market. He's usually just one of those outside guys that coaches love. I don't see much in him.
Coaches hate him, actually.
Personally, well, one
coaches famously hate him.
I don't think they should. He was
every year he's going to be caught in August, and then he is the leading wide receiver for the Giants in November. That was like every year before this year.
Yeah, I could see him going on a wide receiver depleted team and being some sort of flex play. Later, don't really care too much about him. Let's go with AJ Dillon.
He's still in the league. Yeah,
he's still in the league.
Yeah,
he is
been
hurt.
on IR all year, right?
He still had some preseason bump, I will admit. People actually thought he was still going to be in the rotation. Free agent running back, we're going to put him at the bottom. Even if he gets signed somewhere, I don't think he's quite really going to matter. He's going to be one of those guys that you need multiple injuries.
Yep.
I feel the same way about Alex Madison, although I felt that way heading into this year, and he's still just a super annoying player.
He's a fine backup running back.
He's going to be a fine backup running back. Only 26. He has had a couple of 10-point games this year. 1, 2, 3. He's had 5.
Remember when Alexander Madison was like Tony Pollard in terms of how he was like
he was never Tony Pollard. His advanced has always been garbage. But Madison is, you know what I mean. Madison is definitely, I totally know what you mean. And Madison is definitely good at being a good fill-in for like one game. And then it's like if you give him like 3 games in a row, it's like, he actually sucks.
Yeah.
But if you just need one game as a fill-in, he's very good at that.
He said 7, I would say, playable and usable games this year. That's 9 points or more. And I think he's a fine fill-in. I don't think he's going to make anyone nervous, but he's definitely someone you're going to find in your lineup at some point, I think, in 2025.
He's kind of like the Joe Flacco of running backs, where it's like you see him for one game, you're like, man, this guy could be a starter. and then it's like you see him for a couple more games, and you're like, oh, that's
no.
why he's not a starter, right?
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's actually a great way to put it. We're probably gonna end up putting Josh Palmer in this bottom again. He was a fantasy points favorite. He was really projected to have this role. I never really saw it. I don't really see it. People seem to really like Josh Palmer, and shout out Canadian peeps,
Yeah.
but I don't ever really see it with him. I don't even really think about him too much.
At least out of all of these
Like-
players so far, I think he gets paid the most out of all of them that are on there for
I agree.
no real good reason why, but I just feel
don't.
like there's a sneaky contract out there for him,
He
and
does.
it's going to shoot his value way up for like 2 days, and then everybody's going to go, wait, what are we actually paying for here?
Yeah, shoot his value up. That might be like from wide receiver 107 to like 101. The player that I actually think is going to get paid the most because he's a veteran, he's quote proven, etc. I think is DeMarcus Robinson. I think he's just going to be one of those veteran guys that gets in and does a little bit here and there. He's got decent hands.
Well,
He's got 28
tell you what,
targets this
D-Rob-
year.
I'll tell you what D-Rob represents. He's a very good blocker, and he's a winner, professional.
Yeah.
All that stuff. It's if you have a wide receiver, like if you're like a Jalen McMillan owner or something, or if you're like trying to think of another example, like if you're holding a rookie wide receiver, a second-year wide receiver who didn't really do anything, and you're hoping that they play more routes next year, D-Rob is not the guy you want showing up to the facility because he will take your routes. He's going to eat your routes for dinner. But if you have a wide receiver whose routes are not in danger, who will be playing, D-Rob is exactly who you want to see because he is just going to be there to block. He's going to be there to earn 9% targets per route run and catch the occasional touchdown. But Puka and Cop are able to compile like a 60% combined target share, something insane with D-Rob just running around out there. So he's exactly who you want if you have a good wide receiver. He's not who you want if you have a very questionable wide receiver and the issue is routes.
Yeah, Puka and Cup rank first and second in targets per route run right now, which is insane that they're doing that next to each other. Yeah, I'd love D-Rob on like the Chargers or whatever for my lad McConkey shows. Yeah.
Yeah, I see some JSN conversation that I want to touch on here at some point. It relates to Marvin Harrison and whatnot. I think that'll be a good one to touch on at one point. But carrying on, I've got three more completely junk players that I feel like we should at least mention. Fourth, counting Jameis, but we'll see. Where to go? The tight end free agent class is awful. There's no one, but there always does seem to be some sort of veteran that gets signed somewhere, and we go, why? Like the Josh Oliver contract. I don't know how to view like what NFL GMs view as payable tight ends. So I put two on the list that I think
pay a lot of attention to tight end blocking, obviously, in our game.
Right. So I think that there are two tight ends that are hitting the market that could potentially be annoying for someone's favorite sleeper tight end somewhere. Yeah. One of them is the Conk Daddy, Tyler Conklin.
Like if you are like a Harold Fannin investor in rookie drafts, like you don't want to see the Conk Daddy on your doorstep.
Right.
The Conk Daddy is how you look up in week 7, you're like, why is Harold Fannin at 23%? Oh, the fucking Conk Daddy. That's
right.
That's
yeah. That he's annoying. He's like an emergency tight end play. Like he's at 500 yards a couple of times. Really until Davante Adams showed up, he was barely play a 6 targets, 8 targets, 9 targets, etc. He can be productive. He's one of those productive veteran types that has a role. He's like the type of player that would kill like a Dulcich. If you have one of those slow not slow, but one of those low end tight end favorites. I think Conklin is one of those dudes that's just going to irritate you. Period.
Who do you guys think is the best or most valuable fantasy tight end that Tyler Conklin could like seriously dang? Like
Theo Johnson.
Just any tight end who doesn't block. Because Tyler Conklin is going to block, and he's like just a good enough pass catcher that a team could be like, well, we're going to split 11 personnel reps between Conklin and insert undersized tight end, and then Conklin and some other fucking tackle are going to play on 12 personnel, right? Like that's why I brought up the fan an example. Like any of these guys, it's like you're going to look up and it's going to be like, oh, my guy had a 32% route rate, and Conklin had a 53% route rate, and Chris Manhurst had a 13% route rate. And I'm reading a Nathan Yankee article about how Harold Fannin hasn't played outside of 11 personnel in 6 weeks because Tyler Conklin is playing.
The two names that came to my mind was like, but then I immediately realized that they're probably safe from it. It was just Dalton Kincaid and Tucker Kraft. But I think
they already have two guys.
Like, I think weirdly Knox and Musgrave are kind of meat shields there for both of them.
Well, Kraft. The thing is, Kraft is the Conklin. He's just a way better Conklin. Like Kraft is actually a Y, and Musgrave is the Kincaid. It's just that their blocking tight end also happens to be as good or better at receiving. Sir. Kincaid's already been conked. He has Knox. Knox is the
exactly.
Tucker Kraft is him, by the way. I just want to squash all like he can block as well. He also looks like Shawn Michaels when he does the nip up. All right. So let's give Tucker Kraft some respect on his name. I think it's Theo Johnson and Jatavian Sanders.
Yeah, like I think it's Jatavian Sanders too.
I think it's two.
Sanders, it's over for him.
I mean, I like Jatavian. I think he's fine in that offense.
Well, I'm not saying it's over for him now. I'm saying it is over for him.
That's what I mean. Like, those are two guys that I think are legitimately screwed, and I'm going to be very depressed about. The other one potentially is one of my other favorites is Brenton Strange. Like, if they bring in a Conklin and Ingram is gone for some reason to help the blocking, rough days, because I really love Brenton Strange. I see Theo. I see your comment in there.
He can block too.
Yeah, he's really good, by the way. And I remember when I mentioned him on this podcast like 8 weeks ago, I got eye rolls for mentioning him, and that didn't leave my brain. I want to talk about one other tight end. Juwan Johnson is set to be a free agent. Big red zone threat, an offensive player, obviously had a role in New Orleans. This is another guy to me worth taking a flyer on with, one of your last picks in your draft. He can end up going to a place that needs a productive veteran tight end. I'm like a Chargers, if they do not draft one of these young guys, that at that point, if he goes into a sweet spot, I'm going to be into. If he finds his way to Cincinnati, if he finds his way to one of these teams that routinely rotate out veteran, productive offensive tight ends, I'm going to be in on with the last pick.
Yeah, Johnson's the opposite of this. He's the weird one where he is more of that F tight end, the move tight end. He's the one who's probably not going to play more than half the snaps, but the majority of his snaps are going to be in passing situations. The more of the seam route guy. Yeah, I mean, you want to see him go. You want one of two things. Like, you either want to see him go to a team that's willing to use this kind of weird tweener tight end and has proven that they are, and he kind of plays like the kind of role that like Gesicki played in Cincinnati this year. It's like part of the pass catching member of a committee. Or you want to go to a team that no matter what is only going to play one tight end, and that and then it's high variance. Then it's either that means that Johnson gets completely buried, like Gesicki did for Durham Smythe that year, where they're just like, we're going to prioritize blocking over you, or that they're just willing to kind of eat it, like what Seattle's doing with Fant right now. We're like, Fant can't block at all, but they're just kind of pretending he can. That's the best option.
Yeah, I agree. So then two more garbage players, and I'm only going to mention one because it's kind of a lull, but he could also be a starting quarterback next year. So we're going to talk about it. I do want to mention Zach Ertz. kind of as well, but this one is
He
kind of
always ruins
contingent
someone's
on where.
life, so
Yeah, he's the
I
tight
think
end
he's just gonna
cockroach.
stay in Washington.
Yeah, I think he's
I
just
think
going to
Cliff
stay with.
I think
I-
Cliff
I think
Kingsbury
wherever
like
Cliff
is
goes.
in a relationship
Yeah.
with this man. Like,
Yes, that was my exact take coming into
If
this.
Cliff gets a head coaching job somewhere,
He's
I think
coming with
Ertz
them.
follows him, and
Yeah,
then
for sure.
say goodbye to your favorite tight end. This man is a top
Yeah.
10 tight end again this year, and he's just it's what Lucas was saying at the start of the year was going to end up happening. It has happened again. I think he's worth a mention. I think he's worth drafting at the end of your drafts in 2025.
So, correction here. I do think that was Ryan who was calling it because unfortunately
okay.
there's another Washington tight end. And so I have been like just absolutely loathing every time I see Zach Ertz going out there and just dying inside.
One.
But
That's one,
it is
Lucas.
what it is. That's
Yeah,
actually my second one. So
Oh,
I
I
stuck
got
in
that
that
one.
one earlier.
There you go.
Yeah,
But
I've
it's just-
been making my 2% on my Zach Ertz stocks. This
Yeah.
year. It's been very sweet.
One
The Cliff Kingsbury Zach Ertz infatuation is like one of the most unexplainable and just like personally amusing weird crushes that is a thing in the NFL. Like I don't know what it is that Cliff Kingsbury sees in Zach Ertz, who's like I don't think a very good blocker. He was never used in a blocking role in Philadelphia. Goddard was and Trey Burton was. He's certainly not athletic anymore. He hasn't been efficient in like 7 years. But
He ran
Kingsbury's just
like
obsessed
he
with
turned
that.
up field and ran like 7 yards after the catch this weekend, and he got hurt. Like that's what happens when Zach Ertz tries to run after the catch. He goes down and he gets injured.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Let's
Do you remember the Twitter account? Did Zach Ertz break a tackle?
I have not seen this. No.
Throughout his career in Philly, someone had a Twitter account that was just, did Zach Ertz break a tackle? And then every single time he would catch a pass, they would just tweet no.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But I think what you've seen from Ertz is what it is. One day it's gonna completely fall off, but for now, he remains forever annoying. I want to talk about Mason Rudolph is actually the one that like legitimately could provide value. I assume he's starting the rest of the year. Just like I think they're over Will Levis at this point. I think that is over, which I mean, shout out Will Levis. He gave you weeks 10 through 13, where he gave you like 17.5 points per game. Shout out to you, man. That's like all we could hope for. We appreciate you for your service, if you would. But it's kind of over.
Someone's gonna get hurt on a primetime game, and Will Levis is gonna come out, and I'm gonna
It's
tweet
true.
a lot about it.
We've got Mason Rudolph has had 3 games where he was playable. He had the 19.5 point game versus Detroit, which is kind of insane. He had the 17.5 game versus New England, and he came in for mop up duty through an absolute most garbage touchdown I've ever seen in my life. For 15, he gets Indy, Jacksonville, Houston, could actually make an impression, could potentially get re-signed by Tennessee. Maybe they bring in another bridge quarterback, but the quarterback free agent class is not great at all. It's not great, and there's only a handful of spots. We have got the Giants in Vegas, currently number 1 and 2 in the draft. They're taking rookies. There's a couple other rookies. And Ryan, I believe it was you that have this in here as a different potential landing spot for another free agent quarterback that we're going to mention later, which I think is an interesting spot, just not as likely. So I don't know. I think out of this entire bottom ass dirt tier, Mason Rudolph could be the guy that provides like value in 2025.
Rudolph strikes me as similar to Brissett and Heineke 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When they were signed to the Ritter-Howell teams, where it's like if you have like a Bryce Young or an Anthony Richardson, like one of these quarterbacks where it's like a little like I hope that they get a chance next year. Like Rudolph is a very good scenario for them, I think, because the idea of Rudolph is like we're not sure about our quarterback, so we need to bring in a slightly overqualified backup that we can start if necessary. But you don't sign Mason Rudolph planning and hoping to start Mason Rudolph. You sign Mason Rudolph as an emergency if things go poorly for your starting plan. So I think he would be a sign that like they're willing to give the other guy the chance in training camp in week 1 to prove himself. So I would take a Mason Rudolph signing as good news if you're rostering another quarterback, I think.
Yeah, I think I think his best shot is staying in Tennessee and them having like some 4th round rookie that maybe doesn't pan out, or 3rd round rookie, and then you get a starting quarterback. But I think out of all those guys on this bottom tier list that you're gonna play in 2025, Rudolph has the best shot. Just my opinion. That's the D tier. This is it. Okay. This is the low of the low. This is the most trash can you could get. And somehow half of these guys are going to find their way into your flex.
Have we not added Jameis Winston to the D tier?
I was going to ask if we should add Jameis Winston, because it was just 1 week ago that people were saying that they hope he re-signs in Cleveland. And he's the starting quarterback week 1 for the Cleveland Browns.
I still hope so, but I hope for a lot of things that won't come true.
I think he's ass. Like, I think he's ass. I think he's god-awful. I think he's terrible. I think he's been a backup for a reason. But he's been super valuable in that role.
Against anger on this podcast.
Not anger, just Dobbs does kind of suck. Just one had a really bad game and then one had 2 touchdowns. I think we can add him to the D tier after last week. I think if he has any sort of a decent game, Winston is looked at more in the C tier. I do. I think he earns a little bit more faith. Being benched for DTR, not good.
Well, the issue with him is, like, yeah, at any point during a season, he can pop up and average 20 fantasy points per game for as long as the team is willing to bear the costs of that, which is great. And we're always ready and excited for it in fantasy. But yeah, I mean, it always has an expiration date. And yeah, if it ever happens again, I guess, like,
I agree.
Like, sticky note, put it on my laptop. Jameis Winston cannot last forever.
Right. So
you know what happens to sound a lot like D tier? DTR.
Yeah.
And, that's the quarterback thing.
All right, let's move
on. Sorry, Jared
on.
Judy. It's over, buddy. You had a nice 6 weeks, my friend.
Yeah, let's go Cedric Tillman. Let's get back to targeting Tillman there. DTR, please.
Targeting the fucking ground now. He's gonna be like Andy Sandberg.
Oh my God. Good reference. I got that one. Let's talk about the C tier. And there's a couple very clear players in this tier for me. One of them I want to start with. Man, shout out to him. Season ends again. It's Nicholas Chubb. It's mostly over. I can see him taking
year, guys.
Yeah, I can see him taking a veteran minimum type deal and staying in Cleveland, and him being like a rotational back in Cleveland and staying there, or him taking, the veteran backup route somewhere else and having some value. I think he's worth rostering, but I think he's now solidly in the I'm probably never wanting to play him again tier. Not quite garbage, but I'm willing to give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt.
I'd much rather have Jameis Winston than Nick Chubb right now. Like, Nick Chubb to me is dead.
I mean, Nick Chubb, like the best case scenario for Nick Chubb is like this year's J.K. Dobbins. The far more likely scenario for Nick Chubb is last year's Rashad Penny.
God, that's so sad. I put last year's Rashad Penny very far out of my brain, Jacob. I don't appreciate you digging that back up for me.
Yeah, that one hurt a few people, I think.
You would hope, like, the hope would be he signs he's probably going to sign for like a very minimal amount of money as like let's see if he's got anything in the tank. And then maybe he makes the team as like a committee member or number 2, and there's a couple injuries around him, and then he gets a shot, and it's like, oh wow, okay, he's actually recovered. But it's like, I don't know, man.
He's worth a long shot.
I hope so. I hope so. Like, he is one of my favorite players I've ever watched play the game of football, and I would love nothing more than if he makes a full recovery. But
bad year to not hope rookies don't take up all the spots. But to me, he's worth a shot.
Totally.
Where do we want to go next? I want to go with let's go with Mr. Suspended, Mr. Everyone's favorite wide receiver on Twitter that every NFL team can't stand. I mean, 12 fantasy points per game on a 50.9 expected in Carolina anyway, which is top 12. That was wide receiver 11 in expected fantasy points per game, and refuses to get on the field in Baltimore, and they want their comp pick. So they are not cutting this man at all. So he's done for the year. Now, it's obviously going to lead for Twitter to be like, buy Diontae Johnson, the cheapest he's ever going to be. Someone's going to sign him and he's going to be the guy. I don't think so. But I think he's worth a spot here.
I mean,
I will say this.
I'm go right.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I will say this. Diontae Johnson, in hindsight, a lot of things make sense now, right? I remember I was writing in March, like, it's very weird that the Steelers were so willing to just get rid of Diontae Johnson for basically nothing in compensation. Like, yeah, whatever. He's going to be a free agent after this year. Like, why not take the production? I just, as I was like rereading some old stuff I wrote about Diontae Johnson, I'm like, oh, like he's kind of, he's been like, I don't want to say like a head case or a character concern or whatever. He's been an abrasive personality to teams probably this entire time. The Steelers have always done a very good job at hiding that with wide receivers historically. And now we've seen that play out on two different other teams. So likelihood he's going to go anywhere where he gels and it works just from like a human perspective, pretty low. I do think if he gets on the field, he's a productive and useful fantasy player. So this much more than like a Nick Chubb is a guy I would love to like take a flyer on if the cost is low enough, because if it hits, the upside is actually there. All he has to do is get on the field, right? Chubb has to get on the field and make a miraculous medical recovery, and all of that just seems way less likely to me. And even then, you are talking about like a running back in a committee at 29 or 30 years old or whatever it is. Like Diontae Johnson, it physically should be in his prime right now. We know he can score fantasy points. Like it's the other stuff he has to get past, which is hard to analyze, obviously, from our perspective with limited information. So that's like the kind of bet I'd want to make against somebody else that really thinks, oh, he's totally dead.
Yeah, he's a walking 25% target share. He's been that with 5 different quarterbacks, 3 different play callers. Like if he is on the field, he will earn targets. No idea if he's ever going to be on the field. Refusing to go into the game is a tough look for a football player. I don't imagine that NFL teams are clamoring to get him in the building, but it's definitely one to track the beat reporters closely, because like if a team, I suspect he's going to sign for almost nothing, if at all. And it's one of those things where like, you know, a team is going to make him prove without any entitlement or arrogance that he deserves a spot on the field and that he can be a good soldier. I don't have a lot of faith in him to prove that, because he seems like a fucking dick, to be honest. But if he can somehow like decide that if he wants to continue playing professional football and earning a lot of money doing it, that he needs to just be a decent person to be around, and I think he'll be fine. So yeah, I suspect his cost all offseason is going to be like a third or less, and I'm very willing to just like burn that on all my rosters on the chance that it works out. But yeah, I no longer have any expectations for his personality.
So let's take a look at some of the bigger name guys before Jacob gets out of here. Guys that I know he wants to talk about. I want to talk about Justin Fields, because I think he sucks at playing the position of quarterback. I think that he has a fan base that adores him no matter how bad he looks. But he was a worthwhile dart throw last year in the 10th to 11th round. Got a little bit out of him. Maybe got to sell out of it. Who knows? I think he's going to be he's going to be one of my favorite like dead quarterback picks that I seem to always love to make in like the 15th round if he gets there. I want to put him a little bit above, because should he ever get a starting job again, you have an unreal fantasy cheat code. I don't think he ever gets it. I don't think he ever gets that shot again. I think the Steelers sitting him kind of says everything you need to know about it. Shout out that bet that I'm absolutely about to cash. Speaking of bets, Jacob. But I think Fields is probably the number 2 quarterback free agent in the free agent class. With a lackluster quarterback class coming in, I could see someone maybe taking a shot on him and potentially giving him an opportunity to start. Does anyone have anything strong about Justin Fields here in this tier? Again, I think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's a great fantasy
scenario for the Colts offseason, to me, as a fan, is that they just go like, we're going to have Fields, we're going to have A-Rich. We only have to design one offense, and then we're just going to let the best guy play week to week. That would be like the best case scenario for me. Then the fucking nightmare scenario is that we pay Sam Darnold like $160 million. Yeah, I agree.
Pittman Jr.
Best news of the day for Justin Fields is Drew Aller going back to school. That takes one threat off the board. If Milroe goes back to school, that would potentially take another one off the board. Lucas is using the air quotes here because obviously doesn't like these guys, but like that, it doesn't. The issue for Fields is like there's only so many teams, and there are so many plans, and so whether or not Drew Aller is good, I like him. Lucas doesn't. We'll have that discussion a year from now. If that was there was a possibility that one of these teams that currently doesn't have a plan at quarterback decided that Aller was going to be their plan at quarterback. Now that's no longer an available plan. So this pushes Fields up one rung on the possible plans. Other things that are good for Fields recently, Will Levis is no longer a plan, I think, in 2025. I was about 200 feet away from Anthony Richardson trying to make sure that he's no longer a plan this weekend. All of these other quarterbacks taking themselves out of 2025 starting jobs is great news if you're Justin Fields, because let's say it's Giants, Shadur, Raiders, Ward. Okay. That would still leave the Jets. That would still leave maybe the Colts. That would still leave the Browns, right? Like that's a lot of teams where it's like, what's their plan? And maybe part of their plan is Fields. So big time target for me, for sure. Especially because from the what do you win when you win perspective, we know what you win. Whenever Fields plays, he's a low end QB1. That's like
to potential number one.
Yeah. So I'm definitely in on the Fields thing. Like I don't know, man. Teams are weird, but like if you can't, I get why people value Darnold over him. That's totally reasonable. But like if you're not getting a rookie and you miss out on Darnold, like I get that Fields is a pretty low probability bet at this point, but he's still a higher probability bet than anyone else, right? Like, wouldn't you rather take a shot on Justin Fields than 37-year-old Kirk Cousins as a team? I would.
Yeah.
I don't know. My biggest concern with Justin Fields is we've seen a lot of teams out there start really bad quarterbacks whenever their primary's gone down and have done absolutely nothing to try to go in and put even close to competent quarterback play on their teams, whenever there have been several opportunities for them to go out and get a player like Justin Fields. So start Jameis Winston, at some point in time, much earlier than what I think is Tim Boyle going to be starting a game this weekend. Like Tim
Boyle somehow finds his way onto the field every year. It's crazy.
It doesn't make any sense, and I don't expect teams to act rationally at quarterback right now. I think, unfortunately for Justin Fields, that he is going to go to a position where he is not going to have any sort of chance to get on the field. He's going to be in a very strict backup sort of role, and it's going to suck. Like, I still want him on my teams because I think he's going to be really cheap, and we know what he can do. I just don't think that there's many opportunities out there for him to hit what his ceiling could be from what he can produce on your team.
I agree with most of that. Let me hit you with a counterpoint on the go and acquire thing. Teams, this is my belief. Maybe teams didn't want to trade for him and give up draft capital and have to pay us, but paying him on like a minimum type contract, like a throwaway type contract for these teams, might be more palatable than trading a draft pick, even a 6th round draft pick, or a 5th round draft pick, because that's where teams like to get their rotation defensive lines or some diamond in the rough corner that teams really love on special teams. NFL teams value those picks more than we think they should value those picks, but paying him a little bit of money to take the shot, I think actually could open up pathways for him to play next year more than a team trying to trade for him. If that makes sense.
I'll even add to that. I think this year was a little different because going into this previous year, he was still like the Bears starter. He'd been the Bears starter. He was still 1st round pick, Justin Fields. Now that he's been a backup all of this year, like I think what teams don't like doing is they don't like. I just think teams don't. I think they're very conscious of how their fan base will react to things.
Yeah,
and Fields had such a devoted fan base and was like thought of so differently that I feel like teams last year were almost afraid to like make Justin Fields the plan and then have to then disappoint their fans if it didn't work out. Whereas now, like he's lower expectation Justin Fields, where I feel like now if they sign Justin Fields, the reaction of most fans would be like, oh, he's like, we're taking a flyer on this rehabilitation project, which I think is easier to pitch to the fan base and then would be less disappointing if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, it's definitely a perception.
Hard to remember that this time last year, I was fighting all of Bears Twitter because none of them wanted to take Caleb You remember that?
Maybe at a point, I guess.
Well, it was still clearly it was still clearly the right process to draft a quarterback over Justin Fields.
Trust me, I agree with you, but it is tilting Caleb.
Hey, at least they didn't.
But yeah, just the point, your point about the perception, that's what I mean. Yeah.
At least they didn't draft Marvin Harrison with the 101, like people thought, and then kept Justin Fields. Talk about the ultimate catastrophe. Jesus Christ. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get another player. Actually, I'll save the break for Jacob Lee. We're going to save the break. We got like 1 to 2 more players we can get in. There are definitely 2 players I want to talk about. One of them is T. Higgins, and he is obviously the cream of the crop. I got to find him. He's right over here. He's the guy. My thing with Higgins is I want him to stay in Cincinnati. I don't want him to leave. I think his best place is Cincinnati because we know what he can do, and that's be a wide receiver 1, even with Jamar Chase around. There are a couple other spots I think you could go to that would be very good. I mean, Chargers, we talked about it. All in T. Higgins with the Chargers. All in with T. Higgins on the Patriots. There's a few destinations we wouldn't necessarily love. I think this is kind of the no-brainer. Is there a spot that you don't like? Really? Because we know the player. We don't have to talk about the player. Yeah, he's unbelievably good.
The only spots that I guess I wouldn't like would be if he goes somewhere with like a mobile and bad quarterback. I'm trying to think where that would make sense.
Indianapolis.
Yeah, but we don't need receivers. I mean, the thing is like he is going to have such a ridiculous bidding war that the only teams that are going to pay him what he commands are going to be teams desperately needing wide receiver. So I'm not worried about him going into somewhere with too much target competition. Like he is going to be paid a stupid amount of money that I think is only going to make sense if you have the biggest need for wide receiver in the world. So I think he's going to go to like Carolina or New England or Washington is my guess. Maybe the Chargers. I just don't think that the Chargers have the like necessary air of desperation on them. I think he's going to go to somewhere that like reeks of desperation and sadness.
I've got one for you.
Okay.
Dallas.
What is it? That would be awesome.
Dallas looking.
Yeah.
Dallas looking. Here's the problem.
That would be awesome.
They didn't want to pay CeeDee Lamb and they didn't want to pay Dak. So maybe they're cheap. But Dallas overpaying to like make someone happy. That's probably my dream spot.
I mean, I could see
Washington
as very
money, by the way. That's like the Patriots ownership does not want to spend money. That's my ideal thing, like way to address wide receiver in the offseason is we pay T. Higgins a boatload of money and see what Drake May can do with an NFL level wide receiver. That's kind of my priority over like optimally building a team to go to the Super Bowl. But like that's what I want to happen. I don't think it will.
Theo brought up one that is fearful. The Cards one I'm not worried about. It would be bad, but I don't think that the Cardinals would follow up spending the 4th overall pick on Marvin with investing $30+ million a year in T. Higgins. I just think that's kind of admitting failure on the Marv pick almost. I think that the Raiders one, like the Raiders are the exact kind of team that would be like, we're gonna spend because they could do that. They could draft Cam Ward and they could spend a dumb amount on T. Higgins, and that would be ass. That's the worst spot for T, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Although, I mean, I said that about Bowers, and Bowers has been great. Jacoby Myers has put up really good numbers there as well. But then you get T. Higgins.
Yeah, it's a function of it is. I kind of said that a minute ago and then didn't give the whole take, but yeah, you can get Cam Ward. There's actual target competition there that is relevant for a T. Higgins. That's kind of the only realistic place where that would happen. Yeah. And to be clear, I think Higgins leads that receiving core in targets. I just don't think the offense is very good, and it's not like
I don't want a rookie quarterback. That's the one I just don't want that in any spot.
It's just too much uncertainty. Maybe Ward is great, and then it works out, but like it's too much. It's the one spot where you have the chance of potential bad quarterback play plus ugly target competition. Like New England will be the best because people are so weird about New England that they're going to think it's bad, but it's like clearly not bad. Like you would get to be the
I don't think so.
Unmitigated alpha with Drake May. Like that seems fantastic to me.
I think that'll push him into like potential second round in startups. Like this dude, I don't know. People were pushing up Polk, Baker, Pop because May got drafted. Right, and now we're gonna get
that wasn't people. That was us. That was literally us.
Me and Ryan.
Yeah. Speak. I was gonna say.
Also, that's not because of May.
It was
because they were free.
Well, for me, it was exclusively because of May. I wouldn't have given a shit about those guys if I wasn't such a big fan of May. Which, ironically, I was right about May, but it doesn't matter because those guys still suck. Oh, I thought those guys were junk. I was just so confident that May would be good that I was like, maybe he can drag someone along with him, and he dragged Hunter Henry along with him.
I think putting him on like the Patriots pushes him from like the 4 or 5 rounds to like 2, 3. I really do. Like
I think that's correct though. Like that, I think that's fine.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying putting him there. Like to me, it goes Bengals, Patriots, and then like a handful of other teams. But realistically, Bengals, Patriots. I think if he gets moved,
thing for him is like Ryan was saying to McConkey. T. Higgins is #injury prone.
Yeah, he's. We have to shout out Andrew Cooper, but now I have to watch a Hill on for practice to let me know whether or not he's good to go or not. And I don't like that.
And the issue for Higgins, like there's a lot of guys that have gotten a lot of different separate unlucky injuries, but like he has one injury and it just happens twice a season. Like it's his hamstrings are fucked.
You got hamstrings like mine now. That's not good, by the way. I'm a 36-year-old out of shape retired pro wrestler.
I don't know if there's an appropriate hill anywhere around the Patriots practice facilities either for us to get that information.
Beacon Hill.
Beacon Hill.
Well,
all right, Jacob, you got time?
That's about a 45-minute drive away, but that's,
I got 5 minutes.
You got time for one more? I'll let you pick of the remaining free agents who you wanna hit on.
I think we should get hit. Let's get hit with the Rico.
Yes. Okay. That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought that's where you were going. Coach Speak has been glowing for Rico Dowdle.
I have been consistent. I promised myself, and I promised all of my followers that I was in a short-term relationship with Rico Dowdle. That it would only be 1 year. That no matter what, exclusively the bet was that he was just a guy, but just the guy was better than Zeke, and that I would not talk myself into Rico Dowdle being actually good. But I kind of think Rico Dowdle might actually be good.
Jacob. No. Stop being a grade A clinger.
I think he's kind of good.
It's the one night stand, Jacob. Stop it. Brother, we got
over the last month.
He played the Giants, the Bengals, and the Panthers.
We don't.
If he wasn't good in those games,
we don't choose our opponents.
Oh my
Lesser
God.
men have failed in better spots. This man is
I will
churning
say-
out a hundo with Cooper Rush every single week. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not saying
Yeah.
he's some superstar.
These
But,
teams
like,
made Cooper Rush
Rico
playable.
Dowdle is okay. Like last offseason, this all started where I didn't even expect that he would be the starter. This started in like January, where I was trying to argue that he was not meaningfully different than these other backups. Like it was like, why is he different than like Ty Chandler or different than like I forget even who some of these other dudes were, but it was like no one took him seriously at all. And now it's like, I don't know, is he that different than like what's really the difference between Rico Dowdle and Chase Brown? You know what? I'm not sure.
A lot, brother.
The odds
Stop
that,
it. 26-year-old
odds
back
that
going to
he
be
is-
27, looking for a second contract. Get out of here. Stop
He is-
talking.
That was hyperbole.
the odds
If
that
you-
he's
Jake-
Ty Chandler and losing work to
directionally
Cam
accurate
Akers
hyperbole.
this time next year are live. That's what.
If
I'll say.
you
I'm glad
look
you
at the
brought it up.
back of his
Live.
jersey,
For
Jacob,
sure they're live.
when you look at the back of his jersey, it doesn't say Pollard. You can let the Cowboys murky running backs go. You don't
Yeah.
have to attach yourself to it.
Okay, first of all, Tony Pollard has proven this year that if he didn't fuck his ankle, he actually was that good all along. He's been good this year on the Titans. So the Tony Pollard trutherism has been backed
I mean,
up
less
this year.
good when Tajay Spears is healthy, just saying. But yeah.
I like Spears too. I like Spears a lot. But Pollard's played really well this year. And as for Dow, I don't know. He's fine. Like, he is totally fine. And people are so convinced that the Cowboys, I don't know, like, are people still living in 2016? People cannot shake the concept of the Cowboys being obsessed with running back when everything that they've done recently suggests that they are less obsessed with running back than any team in the NFL. Like, I think it is totally plausible they just say, yeah, we'll give Rico $1 million and he's our week one starting running back. We're adding nobody else. We don't care about the position.
Yeah, I think some of that is because Jeanty said he wants to play for the Cowboys and he's from there. I think that's fueling this round.
Last
of,
year
like,
Jonathan Brooks played at Texas and everybody was
No,
so sure
I
that
know.
they
Yeah,
cared about
he also-
Jonathan, like,
he also had one knee.
I mean, Jerry wanted Jonathan Brooks, right?
Yeah, he said
no,
that
I don't
too.
think that he did.
He said
Why,
it
why
in
do
the-
we care?
You
about-
think that was a calculated Jerry Jones move?
No, I don't think. I think Jerry is just a fucking lunatic who says a lot of stuff and doesn't make any decisions. Jerry said that Zeke was their starting running back like 3 weeks ago. Like what Jerry says and what the Cowboys do have no correlation.
This is true. Yeah, maybe that's
Jerry,
like maybe that's the public disconnect though, is because when Jerry was legitimately calling the shots and was not like play whatever with the team, then yeah, they
I think
were
Jerry
valuing
has as
running
much of an impact on Cowboys decision making as I have on Colts decision making. Like he's just a loud fan of the team who's related to people who make decisions for the team. But like, I don't think that he actually has any say in anything. Like the things that he says don't come true.
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
I care what Stephen Jones says, and I
So
care
could
what.
you? So let me ask then. Let me ask the question: what tier does Dowdle go into you?
Like at least B.
Think he goes in B?
Yeah, he's better than Chubb.
If it's Justin Fields, yeah, he's better than Chubb. Yeah, B's fine.
So where are you comfortable drafting them in a startup right now?
Like I don't know. What do I have? Let's see. I'll pull up where I have Rico Dowdle ranked. Right
Like
now. Not high.
mid-season startup, right? He's just taken off. He is he's the type of guy that could have a fourth round rookie
Like
running back come in and destroy him.
Well, like the 12th or 13th round.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right, that's fair. Good enough, I'll say. Not catching a ton of passes, which is weird.
He's too
that's
busy
the
running
spot
for 100
where-
yards every week.
But you would think being down, they'd be like dumping the ball. Well, except for
No, so that's the thing
Last
is they're
week,
not.
except
They
for
haven't
last
been
week.
down basically at all for over the past month. So
They've played
over the
kind of
past
well
month-
recently.
Yes,
Really?
So that 120 rushing yards per game for Dowdle over the past month, 70% snap share, but the Cowboys have been trailing on only 24% of their offensive plays over this span, which was
anyone-
shocking to me when I
that's
found
shocking
that
to
out.
me now.
Did
I
anyone
didn't
wrote
watch
that
the
down.
game this
asked.
week? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not trust. But this is not like a Cooper Rush is actually a good take, but like Cooper Rush cooked against Carolina. He was like awesome.
And the
I don't know
Giants.
who that guy was, and he's never going to do it again. But the Carolina
Bryce Young
game,
also
he was
turned the
sick.
ball over like 4 times, but Yeah,
We want.
It was a bad week for the second-year quarterback renaissance. Like the Will
Yes.
Levis, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young comeback tour just took a shit all over the field this weekend. It was horrific on all counts.
Yeah, it was really, really, really bad. And shout out to Brett Whitefield, who said that the Bryce Young comeback tour has not been as good as advertised. And it definitely, let's not make them favorites for another 2 years. How about that? Do we agree with that, decision makers out there in Vegas? I think Dowdle's going to be a fine pick. He's going to be a classic 10th. He's probably going to get boosted if he gets re-signed and they don't draft anyone of note. I think he's going to get pushed to like the 10th round. And I think I'll be okay with that 0 RB build type thing. But he's definitely a player that could end up, having a 4th round rookie come in and just wreck his shit in this draft class. So, but I think you're right. I think he's worth it. I think he's worth it. That's it for you, Jacob, I think, right?
I just put in the chat the road that was closed all day has just opened, so it just turned my Uber from a 30-minute Uber to a 10-minute Uber, so I can stick around for like 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. We like that. Shout out Uber. Simon, I see your question again, and I guarantee
this podcast is brought to you by Uber.
This podcast not hashtag not a sponsor. Could be a sponsor. Hit us up, Uber.
I will take the Uber money.
We would take
Uber.
If you want to sponsor the Dynasty Points podcast, this is what we can guarantee. We'll say your name deliberately a bunch. I will get a stickable fat head the back of my wall, and I will put you in every single description so long as you fork over the Skrilla. All right? Give me the cash, and I will dance for you to put the Timbits on my
They can
table.
replace me on the show with just the corporate logo for whoever the sponsor is, and we'll start flipping through those throughout the show, and it'll bring about as much life as I bring to the show most days. So I think it'll be great. Or we can just crop AJ Hawk in here and put the logo right there on the forehead and leave it at that. I don't
know if we'd be changed for the better, but that show would be changed for good.
Lucas, I think I just need them to send an outfit for you to wear. I think that would be with like a sign. I think that would be.
Oh, I think
that would be money making right there.
So easy.
Better idea. Lucas turns into one of those inflatable blow-ups that go in the parking lot. That goes
Wacky,
like
waveable, inflatable arm tube mans. I can't remember how it's said in the show, but I definitely love that. So
right,
let's
talk about Sam Darnold. Can we talk about Sam Darnold? Do you have the ticker, Tom?
I don't remember if the ticker is active because it's on a different one, but I'm gonna make one now because I get to actually say it. So
it's actually true this time.
For those people that don't know the history of this, many years ago when it was Sam Darnold QB1 on the Panthers, and he was absolutely tearing it up, I used to run a ticker across the bottom of the screen that said Sam Darnold QB1. And I ran this for weeks and for the entire show. And I'm pretty sure that's what forced our old co-host, Billy, to quit, is because I would not shut up about QB1 Sam Darnold. Well, guess what, baby? Hate it or love it, the underdog is on top. And it's Sam Darnold. He is an S-tier free agent.
Oh, come on.
Lucas.
He is.
Here's the thing.
He is the number one quarterback free agent on the market.
By
He's
a lot.
Going to get a contract.
By a lot.
He could literally be the reason JJ McCarthy is not the quarterback in Minnesota next year.
I don't think that's
now.
Listen.
Let me talk you through this. Let me get through this. If Sam Darnold wins a playoff game, Detroit is falling apart. And Philly is Jalen Hurts stumble away from not being
the Vikings.
If Minnesota gets the 1 seed and they win a playoff game and he makes an appearance in the championship game, do you know how hard it is going to be to move off of him and have the fan base not riot? And with a lackluster quarterback class, the return on investment you'd be able to get from McCarthy would have to be enticing enough. It is very hard for an NFL team to walk away. Just hear me out. Let me finish it through. It's very hard for an NFL team to potentially walk away from a playoff winning NFC North champion, NFC number 1 seed. Do I think it will happen? No. But what I'm saying is the reason he's in that S tier, if it were to happen, congratulations. You've got a back-end QB1 sitting on your roster. And then there's a handful of teams that I believe he could go to. So in my opinion, has to be a McShanahan type system. Has to be. Like it is this chaos. It's the play action, rollout, make things easy for him type system that we've seen. And he needs some weapons. Like, let's be honest. He's not like a standalone QB1 type guy. However, I'm just putting out there that it's not zero, at least, that he's a starting quarterback in the Vikings. I think he's on the Rams next year. That's just where, because Stafford last year was apparently extremely close to retiring, stuff with his contract, etc. He is no guaranteed money next year. Possible, not impossible, but that is my dream nut location for Darnold next year. I will be loud and annoying if that happens. But he has to be an S tier. He has to be. I can't see what you're drawing.
I'm drawing a horseshoe.
Oh, you think he's a Colt?
I think that the Colts and Titans are about to get into the world's most depressing bidding war over Sam Darnold in a couple months, and it's gonna make me. I'm just gonna feel incredible pain. Sam Darnold getting paid $170 million by Jim Irsay is the most me reaping versus me sowing experience of my life. Where I spent all of basically as soon as JJ McCarthy tore his meniscus, immediately all I was doing was just Sam Darnold is about to have a top 10 fantasy and EPA season, and it's going to be hilarious. And then it happened, and it's been awesome. I've loved it very much on all my dynasty teams. But if the result of that is a Kirk Cousins contract to go play for the Indianapolis Colts, I'm going to be it's in an incredibly dark place. But it would be great for Darnold. I think that the reason I think he's not going to end up in Minnesota is this. The thing that would make sense from Minnesota's perspective, if you just look purely at Minnesota's perspective, is fuck it, we'll franchise him, right? It's 1 year. They have the money. You then still get to keep McCarthy. You start Darnold next year. And the plan is, then we let McCarthy have a full year as the healthy backup. You sell it like that would have been what would have happened this year. And now he gets to have that extra year of development as the backup. And then the plan is still McCarthy in 2026.
He's 23 at that point?
Yeah, totally reasonable plan. The kink in that plan to me is, if I'm Sam Darnold, I would go how can you do this to me? I would be I just gave you everything I had this entire season. I have a chance to go get paid life-changing amounts of money, 5 times as much as the tag by the Colts or the Titans, the Raiders or some team. You can't do this to me. And I just don't know how how that's tenable to then bring Darnold back, a depressed, angry, and bitter Darnold. You would have a Darnold who hates you for tagging him, and you'd have a McCarthy who hates you for tagging Darnold. And I just don't know if that's the vibe you want. This year, the vibe has been incredible. And I don't know if you want to come back next year with 2 quarterbacks who hate you for the same decision. If Darnold is down for it, then I think that you do it. But if Darnold is whatever you do not tag me, I just don't think that you can do that. I think it would be too detrimental to just piss off everybody in your organization.
So I feel I also have to mention, people are wondering, oh, S tier, that's a great. This is S tier for free agents, not him as a player.
Right. And
he's going to be the most. He's going
to get 2 years guaranteed by some team.
He is going to be the highest paid free agent in this free agent class. He goes he's going to have dynasty value, guys. He's going to have dynasty value, especially considering we only play Superflex. He's going to have value whether you like it. He has value right now.
There will be several teams that are willing to pay him to be their starter because he's the only viable starting option. And then I think the only way to get him is you're going to have to offer him basically 2 years fully guaranteed. I think, to have a realistic chance to win the Sam Darnold sweepstakes. And then he'll probably get like a fake year 3 and year 4, something like that.
What's Baker's contract?
Yeah, like I think he'll get something in and around whatever.
100 million. Right? Is that what it says? Contract value.
What's the guaranteed? I'm pretty sure Baker got 2 years close to guaranteed.
40 million guaranteed.
40. So it's probably a year and a half of that is guaranteed. Yeah, I think Darnold's going to get legitimately paid.
Baker has the 18th other highest quarterback contract. According
the last time I have on Darnold, I read a I read an awesome piece on from Ben Solak on Darnold today, where they're talking about how they've managed this in this offense. Darnold has by a mile, has the lowest percentage of throws in under 2.5 seconds. Only 26% of his throws have been released in under 2.5 seconds. That's the second after him is Anthony Richardson, and the gap between him and Richardson is the same as the gap between Richardson and 10th in that category. Overall, he has the 3rd longest time to throw, which is behind Lamar and Hurts, and that's because Lamar and Hurts mix in some where they have like 12 seconds time to throw because they're scrambling around so much. Darnold obviously doesn't really do that. It's just he's repeatedly sitting back and waiting on these long developing routes. And it's a fantastic setup for Sam Darnold that they have, because what does Sam Darnold have? He has arm talent out the ass, right? He's always had this incredible live arm, and he can be accurate when he knows where the ball's going. He has time. What he has never been good at is he's never really been able to progress and see the field and make decisions quickly. And he's basically been in an environment where, if you look at this time to throw stuff, where he doesn't have to do that. He gets to sit back behind a great offensive line, wait for things to open up, and then see it and then throw it. And he can do that. Whatever his next coach is, like Tom was mentioning, like they need to understand what his strengths and weaknesses are, because O'Connell has designed something. It's not like he sucks. It's just that he's very good at specific things and he's very bad at other things. And O'Connell has designed an offense built entirely around what he's good at and mitigates everything he's bad at. And he needs another coach to understand who he is and design something around him. And like, I don't know if I trust a coach to do that, and B, like that's a dicey game to have an offense entirely built out of long developing route concepts. That requires a coach that is able to scheme up good enough route concepts for those to get open. That requires Justin Jefferson to be consistently awesome. That requires an offensive line to block for 4 seconds on every drop back. Like Darnold is very good, but he's on this kind of delicate house of cards. And so from a what he's going to get perspective, I think he's going to get a lot of money. From a how good is he going to be? I need a coach I trust big time.
I think he gets like 120. I think he could push 120, 140, 3 years. You have the Titans.
That wasn't so much like I want this to happen. That was more like, what do I think is the most likely spot? And yeah, just thinking about the Will Levis experiment is probably done. This is it's sort of a McShanahan adjacent coaching staff, depending how like liberal you get with that definition. So I'm pretty liberal with the definition.
You met a Shanahan at a party one time.
Yeah, like something in that stratosphere. But I mean, more so, it's a coaching staff that just came in this year, said, okay, we're going to do like Will Levis for a year and see if we can make this work. Now it's kind of suddenly, okay, they're not more than likely in a position to draft a prospect that's going to make an immediate impact. Now it's like we're in save our job mode for this regime. And I think Darnold is going to be the most likely guy that a coaching staff lands on in terms of who do we think can save our job if we sign for a bunch of money. For all the reasons Jacob just laid out, do I think that's necessarily correct? No, probably not. It just makes the most sense to me in terms of who's going to be the most motivated to go out and sign a Darnold.
So hear me out on this. I don't hate that. What if Tennessee goes out and offers T. Higgins a boatload of money and then goes and tries to lure like Sam Darnold over? What if they just do the ultimate like
Calvin Ridley making $7 billion?
I'm looking at their cap. They have $63 million in cap space going in the next year.
Okay.
And they have quite a few players on this list that are post June cuts that save them some cash. Significantly.
Their offensive
Unfortunately,
line is still garbage.
Yeah, they invested in it. I mean, we'll see. It is terrible. It is bad.
They invested poorly.
Like, but like they have some guys they could move. Like, I'm just throwing stuff out here because the show is supposed to be
good
fun.
on the Colts. Now I'm talking
We do
myself
have
into
fun.
it.
Yeah, that is a problem.
Just
He
so
has
everybody
this type
knows,
of-
like I currently don't want. This is my least favorite scenario for the Colts because it's just a great way to stay 9-8. But for the record,
9-8 would
the
win that
scenario
division.
is that we keep Ballard and we keep Steichen and then we sign Sam Darnold. Just so everybody knows, I will fully talk myself into it by July. I'll be very excited.
Yeah, it would
So
be hilarious for the Richardson people on Twitter. I will quote tweet many of them.
My biggest issue with Darnold being in the S tier is the fact that he is so situation dependent, and that scares me off of him. I think in S tier, you are extremely confident about the outlook of his situation going into next year, no matter what, no matter where they end up signing, even if it is a worst case scenario for, say, T. Higgins, he's still going to be able to produce for your team because he's that level of receiver. He's that level of fantasy talent. Sam Darnold is not that same sort of level. He has been in the perfect scenario with great weapons, a good coaching staff, good offensive line, and he's been able to produce in this situation. I don't think that every situation that's out there is going to be really conducive for providing a productive environment for Sam Darnold to function in. And so for that reason, I really don't think he should be an S tier. Yes, he is head and shoulders better than any other quarterback that's in this free agent class. No argument at all on that. But I think that putting him in S tier is you all saying that no matter where he goes, he is going to produce, and he's at least going to be, I don't know, let's just say top 18 quarterback. And I don't think that that's necessarily a true thing. There's a very real possibility that he might be riding the bench by week 5, no matter where he is, because either JJ McCarthy is starting above him or some rookie is starting above him.
Yeah, to be clear, I would have him in S tier, but it's not because I think he's going to produce wherever he goes. It's because if he signs with the Titans, his dynasty value goes up. His startup price goes up 1 to 2 rounds at minimum. Yeah. And at that point, then you can make a determination if you're comfortable sitting on that. I probably would not be in this scenario we've concocted. But yeah, I kind of think you can't lose with holding Darnold into the offseason right now, because it's just very unlikely he signs anywhere where he's not a week 1 starter and is not.
Okay, Sam Darnold or Geno Smith next season.
Darnold. Put Darnold in Seattle and I'd be really happy.
I mean, in Dynasty,
Geno's got 1 year left on his contract. He might have broke his shit.
Quite good. I think I would.
Is he though this year? I don't think so.
I think he's very good. I think that their offensive line is very deficient. I think if Darnold was on Seattle right now, he would be having serious issues.
Geno Smith has 14 touchdown passes and 13 interceptions this year.
Yeah, and he leads the league in dropbacks, or pretty close to it. Not to say
he's
we
34.
Saw a little experiment the other night of what another quarterback would look like in there.
Well, that's Sam Howell. And shout out to everyone who argued with me that Sam Howell is good.
As a Geno truther, that went how I expected, and that was actually quite therapeutic.
Yeah, it's just we're getting a 35-year-old quarterback versus a 28-year-old quarterback.
Man, that would be the one.
I'm taking Darnold.
I think that Geno will just be back in Seattle next year, but that would be the one legitimately. If the Colts could ever get Geno, that's where I'm like, I would buy a jersey. I'm excited. I'm starting to dream about the Super Bowl.
I'm taking Geno over Sam Darnold right now.
I would also take. Well,
you're asking
me right now who would I rather have on my roster? It's Darnold.
No, I mean,
in terms of who do I think is going to have
over today? Who do you want on your roster going into next season?
I would rather have Darnold.
I'll take Darnold in Dynasty solely because
he's not 34.
Like, yeah, just because of the age where like
getting worse.
I don't think Gino's getting worse. I think he has no offensive line, but it's just Gino has no like market growth. Like he is what he is until he can't play anymore.
Yeah.
So he's like Gino is worth, I don't know, early 2 or something like that, and
not even
that or less. I would happily pay an early 2 for Gino.
I know it's just you're not getting that when you send the offers out right now. Not any that I've tried to offload, none. But you have to pay 2 seconds to go and get Darnold. No, I don't. I would have sent it to you.
Yeah, but I think anyway. Point being, like his value is obviously capped because he has the age. Whereas like Darnold, at least, like I don't think it's going to go great for Darnold in his next stop, but he has the upside like a Baker did this year, where like if Darnold comes out and he backs it up and he has a second very good year, he can continue to grow his value. Like Baker's probably worth a base 1 or more right now because he has the runway. So I think if Darnold proves that he is actually legitimate,
which is a long shot, I won't disagree.
Yeah,
like if I were to look at
certain places, right? Like I think
if I were to look at ADP, right, from last year, May through August, and look at some of the quarterbacks, Levis was in round 8, Stafford in round 9, hilariously Deshaun Watson in round 8. You're telling me that Cousins in round 7. You're telling me Darnold doesn't jump from like this ass tier of like Gino in the 11th, mind you, Carr in the 12th, to like he can't fit in the 8th round. That's value addition to me. Like he's gaining value the second he signs somewhere. I would just take that for my and he's gonna be
if Darnold goes to the Rams. If Darnold goes to the Rams as a starter, do you think people will draft him over Dak Prescott?
They would probably be dumb enough to.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, I think that's actually fine because people will draft like Goff over Dak Prescott, right? And like, I know exactly what he looks like in a Sean McVay system because he's been in one this whole year and it's great. So I'm actually like the Rams would be the one spot where I'm not even just optimistic it would work. I'm like borderline certain it would work.
Yeah.
There's other spots like if you went to like the Jets or the Titans, I'm abandoning ship real fast.
Yes. Yeah.
If you went, the Colts would be like one that's on the edge. Like I could see how that works out because they do have a pretty good offensive line.
Because you talked yourself into it.
No, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that the Colts are a better situation for Darnold than the Titans.
Yeah.
They just are.
It's for the meme.
But it's obviously not as good as the Rams. So yeah,
that's kind of my point though. Is like the value ceiling is enticing with Darnold over Gino.
Like
whatever we think.
Darnold is a guy
likelihood to score fantasy points.
Darnold's a guy.
Like the Jets would be bad. I think. Like to me, the most important thing for Darnold is the offensive line, not the weapons. So like if he went to the Jets, I think a lot of people would be very excited because he would have Garrett Wilson and presumably Javonte Adams. And that would be where I'd be nervous because
he's one we should have brought up. The Jets. Adams is one we should have brought up actually because his contract is like not doable next year.
So
like,
I didn't. So here's the thing. I didn't. Contract. So the only reason I didn't put Adams is I think he goes wherever Rodgers goes. I think they're going to find a way to make that happen. And if Rodgers is on the Jets next year, Adams is going to negotiate his contract to stay on the Jets.
Playing in the NFL next year, right?
I don't know.
I think he thinks he is.
I think he thinks he is too, and he's owed money.
Adams is getting like a 40% target share the last.
And that's what and he's going out there to just stat pad himself to prove to the league that he can still play. I think that's why I didn't put Adams on here because I'm just still not convinced he's not just going to tail Rodgers anywhere he goes. So I'm not putting him on there yet.
I mean,
I agree. He can't do it.
The weird thing with Rodgers is that like he is obviously better than some quarterbacks who teams will start next year. Like he's not,
but he's also the most likely quarterback. If you're a coach, you're a GM, and you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers, the most likely quarterback to get you fired is Aaron Rodgers.
Well, that's the thing. It's like he is okay. He's still okay. Like he's probably still like the 21st best quarterback in the league. It's just that he's so annoying
Yeah,
and
he is.
he's not good enough to win a Super Bowl at this point. So, like, what is the
so
point?
annoying.
Like, why,
And he'll lobby for you to lose your job if things don't go
right,
his
so
way.
if I'm an organization, it's like, why would I want to employ the most annoying person in the world to be not that good? Like, that seems horrible. Like, if I was like, if as a Colts fan, a team in need of quarterback, like, I would rather start anyone than have to deal with Aaron Rodgers in my life. Like, that sounds awful.
So
anyway,
I want to
you gotta
address the
go.
chat.
But
I want to address the chat here before he goes. MTM Revolt says, did Jimmy G gain value? Jimmy G had already couldn't lose his value. He lost his job to Trey Lance. That killed him. So that's why. And also Jimmy Garoppolo never had a season like Darnold is having now. So that's important to note as well. Jacob, you have to get out of here.
Was once the QB2 in Dynasty.
Yeah, what do we mean? Did Jimmy G gain value? He absolutely did.
After Jimmy G had like 5 starts with
I don't
Kyle
believe
Shanahan, the year that he got traded, he was the QB2 in DLF ADP the following offseason.
Yeah,
It was Baker Mayfield and then Jimmy Garoppolo.
I can't.
Boston Sports Radio was revolting when we got rid of Jimmy G instead of playing.
I can't.
That was a moment in time.
So first off,
First off,
I played Dynasty in 2019. That's when I started. So I missed that whole thing.
Yes, same as you. This is things that I've found out that I did not know were true because I didn't play Dynasty.
That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. That being said, Jacob, you do have to go. Enjoy your show. Me and the boys here are going to polish off these last couple of options that we have. Pause. And then get out of here. We will talk about what we're doing for Christmas and New Year's Eve as the holidays seem to all just want to wrap up here on Dynasty Points. So enjoy your show. We'll be right back after this break. And we will hit some of these wide receivers next. So sit tight. All right, gentlemen, we are here. We have got here. I kind of want to know what you guys think about this question. We're going to get into the question here. We're not missing it this time, Simon, I swear. He says, I'm overweight on A-Rich. I'm sorry to hear that. He said, flip ideas, Dak, JJ McCarthy, or Penix, ? I would trade A-Rich for Dak straight up. Right now, if I could, I would trade A-Rich for JJ McCarthy right now, if I could. And if I could grab Penix and get anything on top, I would do that right now. I'm tempted to just re-roll Penix right now. I think all 3 of those trades are more than viable. Know your league and know what you have in that league to garner whether or not you get some pluses. Maybe do what I did at the top of the show and search some crowdsourced trade ideas to give you trade structure ideas to see what worked best for your team. I won out on A-Rich. If you guys have anything else, you let me know.
I agree with everything you just said. The only thing I want to say is it is impossible to trade for JJ McCarthy. This is another one of the kind of in the Marvin Harrison vein of players where everyone that has JJ McCarthy,
it's me,
very intent. Yeah, it's all Thomas. They all have him very intentionally. And anytime you think like, oh, look, it's JJ McCarthy, like I'm on a rebuild or whatever. Like let's get some points off my roster value on my team. No one is allowing you to do that who has JJ McCarthy. And I can say that as someone that's been trying to do that for 3 months.
It's one of those situations where you're like, man, I would love to have this guy. Because you see who has him.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And it's usually somebody unrelenting like myself who had this baked into the possibilities the entire time. JJ McCarthy was a good buy in the 4th. But that being said, technically A-Rich is still valued higher than JJ McCarthy. So maybe it's worth a shot. I think all 3 of these are good options. I just think as A-Rich struggles more and more and more, what you need to trade Anthony Richardson is a week where everyone on Twitter says, but if you just watched the film, he looked way better on film than he did in the stat sheet. He looked great on film today, just didn't predict. You need that. That
is like 1 in every 3 or so weeks. So you're right that you should. Yeah, you got a couple more chances to roll into that here. That's probably what you want to wait on.
They were there last week doing this to Andy Buckler on Twitter, and my guy Mr. Perry, Mr. Jake Perry.
Wait, they were saying A-Rich played well last week? Like
not
in week
this
15?
last week.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
2 weeks ago, I guess. And
I don't have that.
Same thing.
I
It was
have
hashtag
too
watch
short
the
of a memory
game.
for A-Rich performances.
Yeah, it was hashtag watch the game, check the film. You don't know what you're talking about. They lead the league in drops. His team let him down, etc. You need that week, and hope you find the right manager.
I thought he played decent against the Patriots. Was it that week? How many weeks ago was that?
That's 2 weeks ago, so probably.
Okay. Yeah. He legitimately did play pretty well against the
Good.
Patriots.
Trade him away.
Yeah. Well,
that's when you do. To me, the way this question is posed, your player ideas, you don't need to be looking at what players you can get. You need to be looking at what managers would take him, and then look at the roster. To me, I would completely reshape this question to who are the managers that I can approach and who are the players I can get off their roster that makes sense, more than this player is on this manager's roster. Let's do what I have to get him. That makes sense. I think it's just how you shape that question a little bit differently for a player in limbo like this.
So I'm looking at whoever has Jameis Winston right now, who like snuck into the playoffs with him as a QB2
last week.
And you're moving Anthony Richardson to him. If he has an injured quarterback you can take back, perfect. If he doesn't, that's probably the only manager out there right now. Like if you have to trade him today, like you just told yourself, I have to move off of him. That's about the only one that makes sense. There's very few out there that does make sense for, but I don't know if it's really worth trying to hold on to him at least until like free agency gets started. Like, yeah, his value is going to go up if the Colts don't sign anybody, at least for a little bit until the draft. And then you'll wait and see if they draft anyone, then it might go up again. But I don't know if I'm willing to take that bet that they won't sign or draft anybody who's legitimate competition.
He's like on the Justin Fields path 2 years earlier, which is terrifying. I traded him for Jared Goff like weeks ago and got made fun of on Twitter and calling that a day. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, feel good about that after last week. Let's move on here. The wide receiver drops most since 2015, which is shared responsibility. Yeah, he's still been ass, and throwing a catchable ball exists. That's a real thing. Like Lamar Jackson didn't get that kind of bump when he had, like previously mentioned, Demarcus Robinson and the ghost of Michael Crabtree and just the worst wide receivers you've ever seen dropping passes.
I completely forgot that
relentlessly.
Demarcus Robinson played with Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
Wow.
A lot of people have. I've tried to forget it.
Wow.
I've tried to. The ghost of Willie Snead, etc. He just got better as a passer as time went on, and that's been proven. Anthony Richardson doesn't look like he's improved on the ability to throw a catchable ball over the middle to save his life. It is 115 miles per hour every single throw. Yeah, a lot of drops, but a lot of really bad decisions, like some of the pick sixes and such. Not great. Not great, Bob. I'm out. Thank you very much. I'll take my exit, if you would. If he pops off and he becomes the greatest quarterback of all time, damn, I guess I'll draft him in a startup at some point. On my roster right now, no thank you. And if I see one more Josh Allen thing, I might actually lose my shit. Because there's one Josh Allen. But there are 2 1-yard touchdown merchants in the NFL. He just happens to be one of them. Anyway, let's move on here with some of these players we got left. Let's rip through these fairly quickly. I don't have a lot of strong takes on a lot of these guys. I want to start with Marquise Brown. Gentlemen, where would you put him? He's about to come back. He has a legitimate opportunity to earn some targets here with Kansas City down the stretch, which is kind of insane to think about. What do we want to do with Hollywood Brown, and what tier do you think he belongs in?
So this is another one, but obviously to like a much greater degree where it's like, yeah, he's injury prone and teams know that and care about that. I don't think you can put him above like B at best. Like the odds of Marquise Brown being in a productive situation are, I'd say, about equal to Rico Dowdle, right? Can we put that there? I have him
in C.
Okay, yeah,
Same,
I'm not
redundancy.
even going to argue that much with that. Yeah, that's
So I
yeah.
agree with you
Maybe
on,
we
like,
just
the
maybe
Dowdle
we've just
thing.
overestimated Justin Fields and Rico Dowdle a little bit. It's maybe what I'm
because I
discovering
think
here.
Dowdle can be. So this is why I think with Marquise Brown, his injury history is a very real thing. It's a very real thing. He needs the ability to, get a bunch of targets, the right situation. That was supposed to be this year. Hasn't, like, he had a decent run enough in 2022 with the Cardinals when Hopkins was out. Sure, he got the chance to be the one, but even with that opportunity, his best year was in 2001. He's had stretches. I've written about it very terribly, mind you, but I've written about it. In the past, he's had stretches of being a wide receiver 1, but now he's 27. He's running out of opportunities with how the league is with wide receivers. The reason why Rico Dowdle is up there, I'm telling you, round 10, Rico Dowdle is going to be my RB2 on a lot of teams next year. I'll be honest. If the situation hits, and then with Fields, it's 100% for the pure upside. Hollywood Brown's upside is capped no matter what we want to believe.
Agreed.
So like he's going to be like around 14, 15 wide receiver, and I'm going to be okay with that. I'm going to draft him at that price because what if with how receivers get used in the league, but this is especially for like a really down year for wide receivers, like it's hard to imagine him really busting out and getting like a significant bag. Like his best option is just re-sign in Kansas City next year.
I was going to say exactly that is, I think his best case scenario is he re-signs and then I don't know, like he really shows out during the Rashee Rice 6-game suspension. But even then, like this is not, and I not to like relitigate the debate that everybody had about this in the offseason about whether he's only a deep threat or if he can win on the intermediate routes or what have you. But I think we've seen pretty definitively this year that that's not like the type of wide receiver the Chiefs are designing their offense around and or funneling fantasy production to. Like, I really think the most likely outcome is he's like the Justin Watson role, but is a better target earner than Justin Watson.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of why. That's kind of where I have him. Theo says, "What's your thoughts on Darnold going to the Saints?" I don't think he will. Derek Carr's their quarterback next year, guys. Like I don't think they can get out of that contract, and I don't think they want to re-up another massive contract for a veteran. I think they finally want to get out of this cap hell that they're in. I also don't even think they could possibly begin to afford it. Aren't they like negative 80 million projected for the cap next year or something silly?
Something like that.
I don't know that specifically, but it's really bad, and I have no idea how they're getting out of it. And they still sign
deep into the negative. It's so like the NFL needs like its own equivalent of just bankruptcy, where it's like, okay, we're going to clear our cap books. Because at this point, why would you ever do anything except continue to kick the can down the road if you're the Saints?
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Who's going to sign up for? Because at this point, you're signing up for like 2 to 3 years of not fielding a football team if you're going to like take your cap medicine, as opposed to continuing to just push all of it back. I
agree.
They need to declare bankruptcy. They need to be given like a fresh slate. I have maybe I'll think about this after we get off the show. I'll come up with a bankruptcy rule for the NFL.
I love that.
Actually work.
I mean, I think he'd be fun in New Orleans. I like Tom said, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'd at least be interested.
Yep.
We're talking about Hollywood still?
Not S-tier interested.
No. Darnold.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other Chiefs wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins.
Kid's honor.
Let's talk about the other receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. I believe he's a void year potential type player. Don't have a lot invested in him. I'm gonna put him in the same spot. I think prime Hopkins is done. Does anyone have any arguments? He was brought in, we were lied to. Brought in for the Rashee Rice role. I think they realized that the Rashee Rice role is really hard, which is what I said to Scott Barrett when they traded for him. Like, they run so many option routes. I don't know. I think it's really hard. I'd actually maybe argue for a B tier. I think he could actually be like a reliable wide receiver 3. if he goes to a spot that would give him the targets, which I think there's a few. You put him in like a Carolina veteran type player, Cincinnati to replace T. Higgins. Go ahead. I'm not going to talk now.
God, that was incredible timing. You just did it a third time in a row. You paused for the exact right amount of time for when I feel like I can cut in. That honestly a talent, Tom. I'm quite impressed. Your one out with DeAndre Hopkins is okay. The Chiefs, they don't care about the regular season. We just buy into this. That's why they just are kind of rotating guys. Like he's going back and forth between like a 50 and a 60% route share every week. And in the playoffs, they are just like, okay, we're going to actually use DeAndre Hopkins in an every down role. And he's going to be a legitimate part of our offense. And everyone's going to realize he's actually still really good. That's like the rosiest picture I think you can paint for DeAndre Hopkins in terms of like he gets significant market interest next year. So I mean, for that reason, I think I would have him in C as well, just because I don't think that's very likely. But that's like the closest or most plausible scenario I can talk myself into.
Yeah, I think a veteran type guy for like a mid-tier competing team, like again, like a Cincinnati, I think would be fun. Right? They lose T. They want a big body veteran that apparently can still get downfield because that's how Kansas City's using him as a downfield threat. So, I mean, juice still in the legs potentially, but I think I'm more inclined to agree with you. Lucas, anything else? Do you have a landing spot you prefer?
No, not necessarily right now. Like, I don't think there's anything that's like screaming out as like the perfect spot. I mean, I'm surprised that Adam Thielen's been as productive as he's been in Carolina. I think it's probably more due to just a lack of reliable options there. So it's not necessarily one that I'm like dying for him to go to.
I got one.
Yeah, I think really his best case scenario is a high passing volume wide receiver 3. Cincinnati might actually end up being the best spot for him. Fill in that like Taj Boyd type role, like that I think could be fun at least for a little while. But yeah, he's not moving above C for me either.
I got a spot that I actually really like, and it's a different AFC North team. Pittsburgh. They want the big body downfield role that they have Mike Williams operating in right now. I think DeAndre Hopkins is better than Mike Williams. Go and chase yourself a ring in the AFC. I like it.
It's horrible. It's horrible for fantasy, but yeah,
terrible, unusable. But
in terms of real life, is that a move I could see them making that wouldn't be horrendous? Yeah, no, I don't mind that at all.
Yep, that's where I have it. And then the other optional one would be Tampa Bay. Would also be an ideal one where I can see him doing some damage. I want to talk about Amari Cooper. I'm going to start him in the B tier, and we're going to talk our way through it as before. Now, Jacob had said that he thinks he is dust, toast, forever gone. I think a midseason trade is difficult. I think a midseason trade to a team that spreads the ball around like the Bills is also really bad. 8.8 fantasy points per game, right? 12.3 expected fantasy points per game. He's the expected fantasy points god in Cleveland. It just his hands stopped working. That hasn't been the problem in Buffalo. So something has changed. He's not dropping every ball thrown his way. I think there's an opportunity for him to sign for a team. Jackson, I see you saying Rashee Rice's role being hard and laughing. It is a difficult role. It's not difficult in terms of like, oh, he just takes short routes over the middle and goes. They run so many option routes out of the slot. That is undeniable. That is very difficult for an NFL receiver to come in and walk into that role and need to know every single option route. That's why the Travis Kelce role is what it is. Because there's a lot of guessing. It's a lot of ad-libbing. It's not a set, you run a slant here. It's not a corner here. It's not a hitch here. For wide receivers, that Rashee Rice role is incredibly difficult. This is also backed by our film charters. And the other people that are responsible at the company to know that that's what it is. It is a difficult role to run, a role to be in. A mid-season trade to a team that runs this advanced of an offense, that is, as it were, difficult, to say the least. Anyway, let's talk about Amari Cooper, because I like Amari Cooper. Yeah, Bindles has said Cooper just had 14 targets 2 weeks ago. Seems like the Bills' offense is very wonky. It is. It is very wonky for wide receivers. I think that Amari Cooper can find himself in my favorite spot, which would be on the Los Angeles Chargers. I think he just fits that role, so he can still get downfield. We've seen that. He can still run routes and get open. Separation not quite as there, Ryan, as we've been tracking with the AS metric, but he still can get himself targets. He can still earn targets in a decent to good offense. They need outside help. A reunion with Keenan Allen's not coming. He can play on the outside, which is what they need. And they need a veteran. I really think they need a veteran to work with here. He would immediately usurp Quentin Johnston, in my opinion. And I think he would have legitimate wide receiver 3 with a wide receiver 2 upside. If for some reason Greg Roman lets Justin Herbert throw the ball a little more, which was my worry. What was my worry this year. It's kind of come true, but I think it's possible that there's a landing spot for a veteran with a good quarterback there for Amari Cooper.
Yeah,
I'm just screams New England Patriot to me. Like I don't know why. I just that is just the match I kind of see coming, and it's going to be incredibly maddening. Like, I'm not wishing this on you, Ryan. It's just that it just seems like it's written that that's what's supposed to happen this offseason. And I think that might actually end up helping his value a little bit. And honestly, it'll help Drake May's value more than anybody's, even though he doesn't really have much higher up that he can feasibly go without, showing it on the field. But I just feel like that's the spot that it's kind of written in the stars going into the offseason.
So this is what I think Amari Cooper is at this point. I think when Amari Cooper is on an offense where he's the only target earner, like we saw obviously for the whole first half of the year with the Browns, and kind of last year too, he's a guy that a quarterback will throw to a bunch, even if he's, as you said, the average separation score stuff has been very, very bad this year. He's a guy that can draw a lot of targets. I don't think he's a guy that can help the ceiling of an offense that much. Like the Bills with Amari Cooper getting 14 targets versus Amari Cooper getting 0 targets is like nothing really changes about the offense, right? In terms of its success and its ability to move the ball downfield. If Amari Cooper is like the guy on a bad offense, then he's gonna average 17 expected fantasy points, and it's gonna be 12 fantasy points per game. So I'm with Thomas, where I think for Amari Cooper's, I think he can be a productive player on a Chargers, on the Buccaneers, on like Bengals. If Higgins leaves, he can
Cowboys
slide into that. That would
a little reunion on a cheaper contract. I mean,
I thought that didn't end very well, if memory serves, in terms of,
I honestly can't.
I thought there was bad blood there, but that would be hilarious, and I would support it. But yeah, I do not want the Patriots going out and signing Amari Cooper as he's our solution at wide receiver so that we can evaluate May and like this is our plan, because the floor on that can fall out so quickly in terms of this is a receiver above age 30 who has some expected fantasy points, not a lot of actual ones. All of the per route metrics, all of the separation stuff is declining. Like this is what a declining receiver looks like from a statistical perspective. I really don't want the Patriots doing that. I would rather them overdraft or draft a Ted McMillan or whatever. I would rather them go out and pay an exorbitant amount of money for T. Higgins, where I'm at least supremely confident that we're getting like very good production there, or getting a very reliable, dependable option for May just to see what he can do with it. That's not Amari Cooper to me. Amari Cooper is a good offense, a contending team that has a need at receiver, takes like a bit of a chance on him to see if he can still be a productive role player.
Yeah. Broncos, Chargers. I think Broncos is another
totally
one.
Work too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's another one I think would work. Just you need someone that can fill. Now he could Allen Robinson himself.
That I didn't want to say Allen Robinson's name, Thomas. I bit my tongue earlier to not
I know.
say his
it's
name.
Kind of what he feels like.
That's like the fear for sure.
That's kind of what he feels like.
Yeah.
To me, worst case is like going and taking Keenan's role in like Chicago. Like one of those scenarios would be disgusting.
Yeah.
But I think best case is like a wide receiver 3 for fantasy in like the Chargers or Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like that. So he goes in the B tier. I want to put Najee Harris in the A tier for free agents. Now this kind of depends on where he goes. I don't think he's back in Pittsburgh, but I think he's going to be the running back on the market. I don't think that's really disputable. He, for all intents and purposes, should hit his 1,000 yards, catch 35 passes, score another couple touchdowns. Right? He's had multiple 1,000-yard years. Now, that doesn't matter really for us for fantasy, but NFL teams take a look at that kind of stuff. Going to be the veteran back, 27. I think he's easily an RB2 next year. I'm buying Najee Harris. If he re-signs in Pittsburgh, because he takes a bit of a contract value loss just to stay. That's the only way I see him re-signing in Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh just does not pay running backs. They just don't. They let Lev Bell walk, and he was unreal good. I think Najee stays, though, at a reasonable price contract, like a 3 for $40, right? With, 18 guaranteed over the first 2 years. He could stay. I don't think he's going to get much more than that in the open market anyway. Maybe somebody will value him that way. I don't know. But if he gets paid, guess what? Buy in. I think he belongs in the A tier because I think he's insanely useful as an RB2. We talked about Rico Dowdle being the RB2 on my teams as a 10th round startup pick next year. Najee Harris would be the RB1 on those teams, guys. Just you know what I mean? That's just the way I play. So to me, he's like an A tier free agent because I think he's RB1 for the free agents by like quite a bit. And I actually don't hate Najee Harris at all. So where are we at?
Najee is a weird one for me because we probably should have said this earlier in the show instead of it deep into our number 3. Realistically, most of these free agents we're speculating in December are going to re-sign, or that I guess in Higgins' case, can they tag Higgins again?
They cannot tag Higgins again.
Okay,
he's got it twice.
Higgins,
I think.
In general, most of these free agents probably going to re-sign with their teams. If like that's just kind of the median outcome. I do think that's close to the worst case scenario for Najee though, because Najee is a player where he's at least like a B- kind of in every area of being a running back. He's good on the ground. He's good between the tackles. He's adequate as a pass catcher. He's not this explosive game-breaking type of player. But where he is right now in Pittsburgh, Jaylen Warren has a pretty clear comparative advantage over him in terms of being the more explosive pass catcher, being a bit better in space. Like Jaylen Warren is an A to an A- in areas that he's getting on the field over Najee Harris. If the Broncos or the Vikings, or there's a lot of teams that I could see just signing a Najee and saying, yeah, we're cool with a B- everywhere at running back and just having that be our plan for 2025 and it being a productive fantasy spot.
Vegas.
Like that, yeah. I really, even Vegas would.
He seems like a Raider.
That kind of works too. Yeah. So yeah, there are a lot of backfields and running back rooms where Najee Harris can be a very productive fantasy player. And I'm kind of with you, Tom. I think we need to do some Najee Harris reputation rehab in terms of like his fantasy perception. Because there's a version of Najee Harris's rookie contract where he kind of has like the Ezekiel Elliott career arc, right? Like if there's no Jalen Warren ever, and he just is kind of in a 75% opportunity share, and kind of like Zeke's best fantasy year by far was his rookie year. I can see Harris being in that role somewhere else for sure. And that's
worst case would be Giants would kill me. Giants would just murder me and my soul and my Tyrone Tracy Jr. shares. It's on the list here that we have in the show sheet. Jaguars is another one that I'd want to shoot myself in the face for. Browns, I don't hate. I think Browns is, classic AFC North, like reminiscent of the Jamal. Oh my God, Jamal Lewis, right? From the Ravens going over to the Browns, and AFC North to AFC North connection, if you would. But I think there's a couple options for him. Either way, I think he's an RB2. And RB2s are just valuable. And he's the best running back on the market here. Lucas, anything to add? Are you good with that?
Nope. No, I think y'all summed it up pretty much. Once again, he is pretty much like head and shoulders above any of the other potential running backs to come on the market. I'm just a little scared with investing too heavily in this running back free agent class. I think that there's legitimate chances that we might see some big name or bigger name, at least for this free agent class, running backs that aren't signed until after the just with how many running backs are coming into the league. I think that this might have a bigger impact on the running back market than we're expecting, because Najee Harris is a fine running back. He's not like a needle mover like we've seen in some of these more recent running back free agent classes that come out, and like they have to even wait around, or they're having to take less money than people are expecting just because of how people have been viewing the position. And once again, Najee Harris, he's fine. He's going to be a B in pretty much anything that he's doing at the position. But this rookie class is going to impact the free agent running back class more than I think that we're expecting. So I have no idea even where to think that he's going to go. I think that it's going to be anybody's guess. We can roll the dice as many times as we want to try to predict, but we'll see.
I like a lot of what you said. That brings me to my next running back, Aaron Jones. I think he is the type of player that is odd man out at his age, a little bit of struggles this year, already got a 1-year contract with Minnesota. To me, that's the type of guy that has the, like, we're just going to re-sign him vibe and have them draft somebody in the mid to later rounds. Like Ryan pointed out, some of these guys are definitely going to re-sign. That to me is a very Aaron Jones type situation to me. But wherever he goes, guess what? I'm going to pay the price of the late 2 that he's going to end up being worth. He's going to be, guess what? The RB2 on some of my dynasty teams wherever he's out playing, because he's just a good player. He's a good player, but free agency could be tough for him. I have him in like a B tier. To me, if he's going in like the 10th to lower rounds, I'm going to be all in.
Yeah,
I don't have a lot to add to him because we know what he is. And I think we just summed up the free agency pathway with Najee, but I would love to hear input.
My only quick thing on Jones is, I don't think he does have the Najee pathway available to him, as you put it, because the Vikings kind of took this very big chance on him this year in terms of the Packers for years have used Jones as like a 60% opportunity share type of back because they have never believed he would be able to hold up to more of that. The Vikings kind of, for the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, tried to run him out in like an 80% op share type of role, whether that's because they suddenly decided they hated Ty Chandler or because they actually wanted to do that is up to interpretation. But I mean, the bottom line is that this is a guy that has lost significant work over his career to AJ Dillon and to Cam Akers. So there is no spot where it's like, wow, wheels up, Aaron Jones, bell cow type of deal.
No, you don't get Aaron Jones and expect bell cow though. Like no part of even this year, I don't think anyone. That's why I was in on Ty Chandler.
His production this year is about as good as you could possibly have asked for Aaron Jones. Like I do think his best case scenario is re-sign with the Vikings and like they go on a playoff run and he plays really well and he re-signs like that. I think that is probably the best thing for his dynasty value.
I think that there's very much a world this offseason where Aaron Jones is on multiple teams before we start the NFL season. Like I think that there's a good chance that he could get signed somewhere and then end up being a training camp cut, or team trying to free up that extra $1 million in cap room or however much they'd get for releasing him. But I think that he's still going to be productive next year, even if that is happening. I think that I don't know if you're getting 4 startable games out of him or 4 double-digit starts out of him. I think that's a fine expectation. I think that's going to be valuable for your teams. So I don't know if he's necessarily a priority buy, but I think that there's a lot of deals that you can work in where he's going to be a throw-in, and then you're going to be able to start him in one of your flexes for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it might be more than a couple weeks. Like I could see him being in a 1A role somewhere, kind of like he is right now, and that is a useful fantasy player. And I think Aaron Jones is still decently explosive. As soon as he loses that, it's super Jover, and it's going to be very sad.
Yeah, he can fit
when he's on the field and when he's healthy and he's not banged up. He still looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, he looks fine. I think he could live on a third down type role and still be a decent RB3 to RB2. So he goes in the B tier. I think he's back in Minnesota. Best case scenario, JJ McCarthy dumps him off a couple of footballs. They draft a rookie, maybe bring in a bruiser, keep him a little fresh. You get some value. I don't mind it. Let's talk about a running back who I think is so over. It's Javonte Williams. I'm out. I am done. This man looks.
You could D-tier him, honestly. You
think you can D-tier him?
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to go that far.
My problem is I can't D-tier running backs. I have a hard time D-tiering running backs.
Nick Chubb to me.
I think they're about the same. I honestly think they're about this. Javonte Williams doesn't look like he has anything. He doesn't look like he has any gas. Like every time this guy touches the ball, it's like it's a catastrophe. But he can catch the football a little bit, which gives me some hope. He's only 24. Like there's a legitimate opportunity where he's a backup somewhere and comes in and gets used, and it kind of bounces his value back a little bit. I obviously would take Dowdle over him right now, but he looks just done. So I'm gonna put him in the C tier. He has no explosiveness. He just looks.
Your best Javonte case scenario is he signs as the RB2 on the Chiefs, and Jacob has 20% best ball exposure. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah,
best case scenario with Javonte Williams, but
I would still put him above Madison for that reason. You know what I mean? I think he's still gonna end up in a lineup at some point next year, and he's 24. He's got a little bit of hope. There's a couple of spots, but I think this rookie class, I'll tell you what, I think by the time we look at when free agency actually hits, he's probably going to be in the D tier. But for now, I want to put him in the C. I think that's kind of where he belongs. I like to put this as probably dead, but not quite yet. He's only been run over by the car twice. They haven't backed over him a third time. There's an opportunity for Sean Payton to do that to him, but it's not quite yet. One other player that I think I am just completely done with is Stefon Diggs. I was out on him in Dynasty heading into the year, and then he made me look foolish for a little bit when he started to get used as a tight end. But he was pretty productive. 6 catches, 77, not getting used downfield. Very much a line of scrimmage type player. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, Ryan, but
no, I'll check out.
31, coming off a mid-season ACL tear. I'm out.
I will say,
out.
as far as like the downfield stuff, I want us to keep in mind, like that this is the Texans and that this is the most pathetic offensive line I have seen outside of my team this year, or the Giants, I guess. So, is it like this PPR scammy, like check down weird line of scrimmage usage a lot? Yes. Could that have been more a product of the team and the environment and what they needed and what they thought they could do? Also, yes. But is it all probably moot for a 31-year-old off an ACL? As you said, yeah. So that's why I would put him as like, I definitely put him over a Hollywood Brown, over a DeAndre Hopkins, just because we have seen him be relatively productive for fantasy on a football field this year. Maybe that's enough to put him into B if that's our threshold for like Rico Dowdle or Justin Fields. But
they're there for scarcity, in my opinion. Quarterback and running backs versus wide receivers.
But I would clearly rather have Diggs on a dynasty roster than anybody else in this tier.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. But the mid-season 31-year-old ACL tear on a 1-year contract with attitude problems.
Yeah. Where could he go? What's the
insert every single one of the teams we've just mentioned that needs a veteran?
I guess it's the same thing as like Amari Cooper. Yeah, is you need him to sign on like a good offense as a secondary or tertiary option.
Someone that could deal with his
drag to fantasy production. Yeah. And
someone that could just handle him and like deal with him being on probably a bad team. Tough. Because there's some other guys on here, like guys like Christian Kirk that could be a free agent sooner than later. Like, I think this wide receiver free agency pool is going to get bigger before it gets smaller, and he could be an odd man out. I mean, these injuries are brutal. He doesn't have the Ayuk safety blanket. He was on the 1-year deal. So for Dynasty, he is the highest on this tier for upside. But again, I'm probably out. Let's move on to another running back I'm going to put in the C tier as J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins had one opportunity to play through this year and make it without getting hurt and earn himself some money. I'm out. I'm done. J.K. Dobbins was very good. He was actually unreal good.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Like RB1 good. And then he found a way to land on injured reserve with a knee, probably making him untouchable for NFL teams. 8 touchdowns. He had 766 yards, was catching the ball pretty well. 26 receptions. 28 receptions. Sorry, I can't read. I'm out. He's probably going to be like second highest on this tier, but I don't want him. I'm out. I was out at the start of the year and he made me look foolish. I'm out now. His best case scenario is re-signing with the Chargers and hoping they don't bring someone back.
Yeah, I agree with that. His best case scenario is re-signing. I'm not out. Like we watched him elevate a running game basically like by himself. Look at what the Chargers backfield production has been the last few weeks without him. Yeah, like clearly you want him in this system with these coaches in this offense. That's the best case scenario. But I would have him in B just because I think he's still a capable NFL player.
Okay, Lucas, am I overreacting?
No, I don't think you are. I wouldn't put him in B. I think that C is the solid tier for
what
him.
If we put him
now?
What if we put him at the 1 spot?
We need like a B.5 for
that's what you told me last time.
I don't think we need a B.5 with J.K. Dobbins.
I think he has 1 spot to go to, which is where I think the problem is. And I think it's with the Chargers. I think he had 1 spot before the year, and now he has 1 spot after this year, and it's wherever Greg Roman goes.
I mean, it is the most likely thing for him to do, though, right?
And then have them not bring somebody in, which I think is
I guess that's the problem.
That's a 0.
I mean, Jacob was saying that the best case scenario, what was it for Nick Chubb, is that he does. Oh my gosh! Now I'm completely losing players. The Seahawks running back 3 years ago, Rashad Penny. I'm sorry, I completely blank there. But
okay,
I think
I've
that his
forgotten
best
about
case
him too.
scenario was this year with Penny, but instead of doing it over the back half of the season, whenever people are remembering that because he's winning you leagues and crushing the playoffs, he did it over the front half of the season. And once again, thanks for all the help that you did getting me, 1 seeds or, getting that first round bye. Like, awesome. Thank you so much. But see you later.
Yeah.
He's not going to be somebody that I'm actively trying to go get on teams. Like, if he's on waivers, if somebody like hates him that much, or if he gets dropped by the Chargers and ends up on waivers, fine, I'll go pick him up. But he's not somebody I'm actively going out and getting. He just has more life than the people in the D tier right now, which is why he's on C for me.
Shout out J.K. Dobbins for netting me a 27 first this year. You're my hero, and I'll love you forever. I will never get rid of the jersey I have of you. So shout out. Let's talk about 2 wide receivers. I have them kind of the same. I'm actually going to put Keenan Allen in the A tier because that Keenan Allen, guys, I don't know if you guys realize this or not, super productive this year in an offense where he shouldn't be. And when I say super productive, somebody might roll their eyes. This man, fat Keenan Allen, has 4 games of over 20 PPR points. That is insane. Now, he doesn't have a whole lot of anything else. He has had some injuries, but he is the reason, for the most part, people are screaming about Rome Odunze right now. Talk about an active veteran wide receiver that can sign somewhere and command targets. I think Keenan Allen still kind of got it. And he's the most valuable wide receiver not named T. Higgins as a free agent. If he stays healthy towards the end of this year and continues getting 13 targets, listen to these last couple of games, guys. 8, 15, 8, 5, 13 targets for Keenan Allen. And they got Detroit, Seattle, Green Bay, where they're likely behind a lot of these again. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me that Keenan Allen belongs here. I think he's going to be worth a 2 at some point next year. I think I'm going to draft him in the 9th round. And he's going to sign somewhere nice. Do you want to talk about a possible Dallas Cowboy? I think you're looking at him. This is just that guy to me. Can play inside, can play outside. Does all the little things well. Highly respected. Hyper productive. Please don't re-sign in Chicago. I like Keenan Allen here. He's the 2nd most valuable wide receiver in this class.
You know who would absolutely murder in the Chris Godwin role would be Keenan Allen.
Yes.
That would legitimately be like Keenan Allen's averaging 17 fantasy points per game since they fired Shane Waldron, in case anyone wasn't aware of that. And I'm saying that to make the take I'm about to give seem less absurd. I wouldn't be that surprised if Keenan Allen, in that best case scenario, posted top 12 fantasy numbers next year. Like that,
Yep.
That's in the range of outcomes. So yeah, I completely agree. There obviously there are lots of very terrible spots he could go to. Obviously the wheels can fall off with these guys at literally any point. But yeah, I think in terms of how the market's going to perceive Keenan Allen, because the market has hated Keenan Allen for like 4 years running, and they've been wrong basically at every turn.
I know. I've just been printing money with him.
Yeah. So he's one I'm expecting I'm going to be touting or like sending seconds for or whatever this next offseason.
At some point, he's going to be that valuable.
Yeah.
So to me, he's the 2nd most valuable, which makes me really sad given who's the last one on this list. I got to put him in the B tier. Is my goat, my man, the man that was making me so much money, made me look so right. Chris Godwin, my favorite 9th round startup pick last year, has to go in the B tier. That ankle is everything, and that ankle was not attached. That can be such a devastating injury for somebody to come back from. 30 years old, no contract. I think it's more likely that Godwin just re-signs in Tampa Bay than somebody like Allen comes in. They'll give him a cheap deal. Hopefully they get something out of him. If McMillan keeps taking off, I can see that. Otherwise, it might be rough out there for Godwin. He was so good in that role. I think outside of that role on that team, scary. But I also think even coming back from an ankle, he's better than Amari Cooper. So I have to put him above Cooper. Anyone else? Like if I'm putting him here under the impression he's back in Tampa and we get him for the back half of the year type stuff. Does anyone else have anything to add? I'm sad, by the way. I'm still very sad.
Yeah. If they don't re-sign him, it's pretty catastrophic, I think.
I think it drops him a tier for sure.
I think that B tier is kind of wishful thinking. Like it's tough to put him in C. Like just looking at who's in C right now, like it's tough. But he's once again somebody who I'm not actively going and getting, and I'm not necessarily really actively going and getting Keenan Allen. I didn't realize just how good he has been recently. So thank you for that little update there, Ryan, for what he's been doing in Chicago now. But I don't know. I'm terrified of these wide receivers who, at times look a little washer coming off of a major injury. It's just it's not really where I want to be living. Maybe just the Bears make Allen look that rough, but it has not been a fun viewing experience watching the Bears, and maybe that just has me some bad biases on Keenan Allen now.
I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it's looked pretty or anything like that. But yeah, I mean he's a guy that gets targets.
I think Keenan Allen's that dude when he's on the field, man. He really is, and more on again. I'm being honest. He's more on the field than we wanted him to be. But he's producing. I mean, it was kind of a garbage time touchdown this last week. Sure, I'll take it. I'll take the fantasy points. I need the fantasy points. I'm starting Keenan Allen in the playoffs. So there we go. That's the type of season we got. That being said, that's our list of free agent. This free agent class is rough, but this rookie class is rough. This entire offseason is going to end up rough until we have more information. With that being said, that's going to do it for tonight. We got a lot off the top of the show that we weren't planning for, but I'm glad that we got to touch on it a little bit. That being said, there will be no live shows for the next 2 weeks. We are pre-recording the next 2 Dynasty Points. Lucas has potentially gone to a place he's not allowed to tell us. And we have Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve for Dynasty Points. So we're not going to be live with you guys on those nights. I know I can hear everyone sad. Don't worry. We are recording some episodes. We're going to do an AMA for next week's episode. And then after that, I haven't figured out what we're doing for that yet to cap the year off. I believe because next week is the finals. We're doing an AMA for the week of the finals. And the week after that, we might do a recap of the year for us and just talk about the year that was pre-recorded as we go into the new year. James said Denver, Detroit, and Cincinnati for DST this week.
Easy.
Cincy, yeah. That's
I was
an
hoping
easy
you'd
call.
say that because I didn't. Yeah, I really wanted to answer that question, but yeah,
You were eager.
Very, very easily the Bengals.
That's Ryan Heath's DFS point for tomorrow. Is that? No, I'm kidding. But that's gonna do it. That's gonna do it for us. We appreciate all you guys. Talk about the new year. It's been a hell of a year for us. We set records here last week towards the end of the year. We thank all you guys. Every comment, every like goes a long way. Tell your friends. See us in the Discord. We had a hell of a discussion today over the difference between Burrow and Stroud. We have constant conversations about values. The startups are going to be crazy. We have so much content coming here in the offseason. Fantasy Points has never had this much Dynasty content. Theo Greminger is going to get involved in the mix with us here as we move forward. Dynasty Points Market Report with Andy Buckler and I. We are not stopping throughout the holidays because we have no lives. We are going to be here talking value. So with that being said, you will be able to find me tomorrow morning on Sirius XM with Joe Dolan talking a little bit of Dynasty, Hump Day with Hanson tomorrow. So much more content. You're not going to want to miss it. I love this show. I wouldn't trade it for anything. With that in mind, remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose it, and your best days are always spent tilting with us at Dynasty Points. We'll see you guys live in the new year.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.